No, diamond is so critical, and the fact that there are multiple reasons right now that make it look like diamond's in serious trouble, I think is the single scariest thing to me, to make me wonder, is it possible I'm still viable in 5 years, right? Because if diamond is not viable in 5 years, I literally do not know that it is possible that my store is viable.
Hi, my name is Adam Freeman. This Comic Industry Insider is a weekly podcast where I get to talk to some of my friends, some of the people I've known for decades, people who make their living in comics and have made their way in their career in something that we all love. And then hopefully in doing so, I learned something about them that we can share with you and can affect your business or career in comics. This one is probably one of the most requested interviews and that we've had in a long time. So I'm looking forward to this. Brian Hibbs has owned and operated Comics Experience in San Francisco since 1989. Has written perhaps the longest running industry facing column, Tilting at Windmill, since 1991. Was a founding member of the board of directors of Comics Pro, has sat on the board of Comic Legal Defense Fund, and has been an Eisner Award judge. And his store was a finalist this past year in the Eisner Spirit of Retail Award. I've known Brian for a couple decades now, and going back to my own years as a retailer and regular reader of his column, he and I have sparred over many industry issues, especially once I started working in publishing. And when I sat to research this, my first inclination was to remove anything challenging or aggressive from my questions. But then I realized who I was talking to, and that with as much respect as I have for him and his legacy, I also wanted him to have a good time. So I put all those aggressive questions back in because I know how much he loves a good sparring match.
Yeah.
Friends and neighbors, the quintessential comics retailer, Brian Hibbs.
Hey there, Adam.
How you doing?
No, that's a great intro. I'm doing great. I'm doing great, man.
Good. How's the shop? How are things?
Oh, I mean, we're a comic book store in 2024 in San Francisco, and so we're doing okay. I mean, we're open, right? So the literal fact that we're still open when retail everywhere in this city is collapsing and crushing, I think that we're doing okay,
I say this over and over again, mostly because I want to reinforce the message. But when you look at how brick and mortar retail has performed over the last 2 decades versus how comic shops, direct market stores have really remained consistent year on year during that same period. And there is no question that this is this industry that you and I have chosen, this particular sector we've chosen, is like the success story of brick and mortar, right? Even compared to big chains. All right. Well,
yeah, but also, I mean, here's where let's start the pushback immediately. I think that I think shit's fucked up, man, and I think it's really hard to be an independent retailer, not only in general in the environment, but in the direct market as it's constituted in 2024.
Sure, absolutely, but it's always been hard. B, it's harder. Maybe it's harder now than it was at one time, but it's definitely parts of it are easier than there were at one time. I would say that there's, consistency of the store count, I think, is really what pushes me to say, at least that the math says that it's not necessarily that it's too hard, but it is. I mean, it's difficult. Obviously, I don't want to take away from that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the store count is an interesting metric to lok at, but I don't know inherently that it's the metric, because I think that as Joe Field has said, we are the cockroaches of retail, right? And the reason that we do it is because we literally don't know how to do anything else. And I mean, for me especially, I've been doing this for 35 years. I literally would not know what to do in any other way, shape, or form with my life. But I also don't think that the vast majority of stores, are doing better than breaking even. I truly don't believe that. Because the math isn't there. I mean, the first question was how are you doing? Yeah, I mean, I'm breaking even.
Sure.
That's I've been breaking even since the pandemic, pretty much.
Right.
And anytime there's any chance we're going to start making a profit, something else comes up. Like, well, I've got to pay my staff a living wage. And in San
Sure.
Francisco, everybody who works for me now makes more money than I do on an hourly basis, and I'm totally fine with that because, again, I've been doing this for 35 years. I set my life up so that my nut was fixed 25 years ago.
Yeah.
I have a mortgage. My rent never goes up ever. My staff's rent goes up every month, not every month, but every year and probably every 6 months, and it's not, that part of it is not sustainable. It's literally not sustainable in a big city like this,
But you made certain choices for that as well, though, right? I mean, you chose to remain one store, right? I think you did actually try for a while to go multiple stores.
A second store, dude.
I know, I understand that, and that didn't, you weren't. Your model, I guess, wasn't designed for that, or the city wasn't designed for that. There are plenty of other indicators that could be that. But I'm saying is that you made some choices that decided the size of your store and that decided the kind of staff that you were going to have. You decided how much time you were going to spend with your family. You decided all of those things ahead of time, right?
No. I mean, that last part, the store is literally, I spend more time with the store than I do with my family.
Well, I mean, yeah,
and I always have, and I almost certainly always will, because it's not possible to be a retailer, a comic book retailer in particular, and not. And
it's not possible to be an entrepreneur and not. It's not possible to be self-employed and not, and still raise a family, right? That's true.
Correct, absolutely. Okay, but the other part was when I bought the other store was absolutely everything that this store is not. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It was a back issue oriented store. It was a single issue oriented store. It was a collector oriented store. And I worked really, really, really hard to fulfill what that audience wanted, because I knew that the model here on Divisadero Street was not going to work on Ocean Avenue. I knew it could not. It could not work. This is a singular kind of thing that I built here. And I didn't want to do that over there because that's not what that customer base wanted. And that store never made any money at all. No matter how I tried to lean into it. And so I bought it from a guy who was not particularly organized and not like, there was a lot of shit going on there. They had tens of thousands of back issues, but they were not in any order. They were all in a basement that no one could get to, that even the people who worked at the store could not fit their way through the aisles because shit was so packed and disorganized and whatever. We spent so much time and so much energy fixing that problem, and still the store never made any money.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to ascribe a because, but I tried really hard to work with a different business model than the one that I believed worked the best for me in this location. And it didn't work. I mean, and that store had been there as long as this store has been here. Right?
Sure.
Like, it was a 35, maybe it might have even been slightly older than me when we took it over at that point. Though it had been through like 7 ownerships.
Yeah.
It constantly rotated through people owning, because everybody likes the idea of running a comic shop, but nobody really wants to do the hard work.
Exactly.
And look, I'll even go a further step in that. When I sold the store, because I didn't close the store, I sold the store to someone else. I spent months teaching them how the economics of comic book retailing and how ordering works and things like that. I was really clear to them, don't start thinking that a 1 in 100 is going to save you as your economic model if you can't sell 95 copies of the base book, right?
Right.
I was really super clear about this 9 months, I think, after I gave them the keys. They closed because the guy started ordering 100 copies of comics he couldn't sell 90 of.
Right.
Right. And so that, like, the math on that shit, it just don't work, you know? And
but yes, you're right. The math on that does not work. And it's something that is a very common trap that especially single stores fall into because they don't have the capacity to pull that off. But I think that there are stores in your area, right, in your commutable area, that are doing well with that model. So it's not as though it's the area. What I'm saying is that you go back to the thesis, right?
Yeah.
You have made choices about your store. You have certain strengths and weaknesses that have decided the size and capacity of your store. Those are choices you made.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. But not true.
Okay. So and I'll go back to that in 1 second. I just want to who in my area is doing that as a model. I know
there are plenty of stores in your area that are focused more on single issues than you are. That is true, and you know that. I don't want to get into the mechanics of it into any other person who's not in the room.
Right.
But you and I both know that there are plenty of stores in the Bay Area, in the commutable area from your store, that are making choices about single issues that you choose not to, and that's okay. What I'm saying is it's not the market.
Yeah,
it is the model.
I do not agree whatsoever with that part of it, because especially when you say commutable, like people literally, dude, people in San Francisco don't walk more than 2 hills. They don't. They won't get in a car and there's no parking anywhere. How can you drive?
I know plenty of people in the Bay Area. I know I'm not speaking from just, outside of, but also I'm not going to bring in the testimony of people who are not in the room.
So it's a little difficult to figure that.
That's
all right,
fair.
Let's go back to the first part of the question of the choices that I've made have limited the thing that
they always do. Every choice you make limits.
Every choice you make has ramifications for that. But the rent in San Francisco being what it is, the velocity that you can sell things, and again, I've tried every method that there is, and we can talk about that again in a minute. There's no way that I could ever afford a bigger space, a more central space. It would the math on that would never, ever, ever work. And I can point to Dark Horse's Things from Another World, for example. That was at the Metreon, which was a giant, huge shopping center kind of thing. That store never made any money at all. Ever made any money at all. It dragged the whole rest of the chain down, is what the managers told me, at least. The only store that worked downtown was Jeffrey's Toys, but that's because it was a toy store that had a sideline in comics, and it's literally in their name. That's not me going. That was a bad choice. That was a good choice for them, right?
Right.
And again, post-pandemic, that stopped working because there aren't any people downtown anymore in offices. So nobody's going downtown to pick up their subs.
Right.
You can't get new comics downtown. The math on it just doesn't work whatsoever anymore. When I opened the store in 1989, I was as traditional as a comic book store as you could possibly imagine. The entire center of the store was nothing but back issues. All of the racks gave full cover to periodical comics. I kept 6, 8, 9 months of periodical comics up on the shelves, and they sold in 1989, right? Like that was a model that worked. But as time went on, it stopped working. That was not, even though we were supporting that, it stopped working. And I had to change what the model was. Otherwise, we would have gone out of business 25 years ago. For sure, dude.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, I'm questioning.
There's not even a question about that. So like, it's kind of leading when you say you made choices. Yes, I made choices, but I made choices that were in the best interest of the store going forward as an economically viable thing.
Right.
And
No.
then as I started leaning into some of those choices, I went, actually, I really enjoy this part. But it wasn't like, hey, I'm gonna change comics, right? Like that was not that happened as a result of the economic actual reality of things, you know? And again, this is when, you know, staff was getting paid $8 an hour, right? And now I can't pay anybody less than $25 an hour, right?
Right.
It you know, and so the math is even more like you can't do that kind of business anymore.
No, absolutely. You could not do that kind of business anymore. But I feel like there is something we need to scratch at. Obviously, you and I are both kind of hung up on this.
Yeah.
You made choices about your own lifestyle, right? You made choices about what was important for the store, right? How big is your store? I'm just going from memory.
1,200 square feet on
That's
the
what I was
floor.
going to guess. Yeah.
And there's 400 in the back room, but that's not floor. Yeah.
I would say that
as far as I know, in the 7x7 San Francisco, and people, like you say, commutable, nobody comes from Berkeley, and almost nobody comes from Berkeley to shop in a comic book store or Oakland or anywhere out. All of my 98% of my customers are in the 7x7 of San Francisco.
Okay.
Also, you know, I'll say we started off with it when I opened up in 1989. There were 24 comic book stores in San Francisco. There are now 7. Okay, so
sure. Yeah,
you know, I want to put that out as well because I think that shows me that the model works, and you know,
you've survived. And survival is its own right. It is its own evidence, right?
Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah,
but what I'm saying is that I feel like that you kind of need to take responsibility for the fact that your store is a reflection of you. I can think of a number of stores who would never have had what it looks like a handmade sign behind them at the cash wrap. Mm-hmm. I can definitely tell you a number of stores would never do that. Sure. I can tell you a number of stores that are successful in that they are long-lived, and they are, you know, parts of their community and what have you. In 1,200 square feet, where one person works the counter and that's it. Maybe he has a part-timer. Sure. You've made choices. I'm saying, why not take responsibility? Why not take ownership? Why not allow for the fact that other people are making other choices?
Sure. Yeah, right. Yeah, no, absolutely. A single store. Actually, let's not do that because I don't want to talk shit about anybody who's a retailer ever. Even if I disagree with that thing, you know, we're the only store in San Francisco that I'm aware of that has a full-time staff that operates the store, that I'm paying that full-time staff to operate this store, that is making enough money that works. Everyone else that, as far as I know, they're all mom and pops, and none of them has more than, I want to say, 2 super part-time employees, right?
Right.
The owner operator is the person who's there all the rest of the time. And I would like to believe that we've found a way so that 4 different people can make a living off of this store. And that I'm almost never behind the counter anymore. Kind of on purpose also as well at this point. Because the rest of my staff is so much better at selling comics than I am, you know.
That's smart. Yeah,
and also because they're so much better at selling like today's comics than I am.
Sure.
Right? Like, you ask me what's good, you know. Oh, I love Grundle, you know. I love Sandman Mystery Theater. I love Sandman. I love the Jam, you know. I do love all those things, and you know, and we sell them even when I'm not here. But you know, that's not today. Right? That's not where the market is at this moment, you know? And so I'm not owning my choices. What I'm saying is I think that the choices that I've particularly made prove more that I'm right than I'm wrong, right? Because we're successful at doing it.
Sure.
We're sustainable at doing it. And, you know, I mean, you know, it is my intention at some point to just give this store to the staff, right? And then they'll keep running it for another 50 or 100 years. You know, I hope that's what I want.
So
You
let's
know,
again, you're
and
dialing it all
I
the way
don't
back.
think that that's possible for almost anyone else. You know,
Dialing that all the way back to the beginning.
sure.
You understand that the choices that you made led to this place where you have multiple people making a living wage, running
Sure.
the store. You no longer have to be there. They are better at that than you are. You know that you're making a choice right now, not right now, but seemingly that you're making a choice to give it to the staff when it's
Sure.
over, so they can
Yeah.
keep it going. All those are
Yeah.
choices that you made. What I'm saying is,
What
how
do you
hard
mean
is it? The
choice, dude?
logical leap. How hard is the logical
Yeah.
leap? That the choices that you made not only got you to this place, but also limited it to the point where you're only breaking even. How hard is that leap?
That leap is basically impossible because as I
Okay.
game out all of the other probabilities of what would have happened had I made choice this way different,
Okay.
all of the rest of those probabilities end in store closes.
Fair enough.
No, and I mean, and I'm not saying this lightly, dude, because literally this is all I think about all day long, every day. You remember this as being a store owner, of course. Yes, you're right. I make choices. Every day is a choice. Every day,
Sure.
waking up, coming into the store, doing the thing, it's a choice. But the other choices would not have led to anything viable because again, we had 24 stores. We're now down to 7. I think that I would suggest to you that most of the other models that you might say are successful models for other business owners have all been tried and failed in San Francisco proper.
Okay, but that again is a limiter in San Francisco proper.
But that's the store. That's where we are.
The store. What I'm saying is that if you had built a chain, for instance, and there was one person doing the work that you're doing for multiple stores right now, that would be a much lower limit on each of those individual stores. If you had moved outside of San Francisco, if you had gotten to a place where you were doing larger mail order out of a warehouse in the outskirts of town, there are 1,000 different decisions that you could have made that would get you to a place where you're not just breaking even. But what I don't understand is that you are choosing to refuse to look at those choices.
Oh, it's not. I've looked at those choices extensively, Adam, is the thing that I'm trying to tell you. Okay. And most of those choices are not viable in the Bay Area, right?
Okay.
Like, as you say, having a warehouse somewhere cheaper and doing mail order. There's nowhere cheaper. There isn't. You could be a 2-hour drive away. You're still paying people $22 an hour, right? Like you don't have to pay them the $25 necessarily, but you're paying them at least $22 an hour. And fundamentally, mail order is a more labor intensive and less ROI business for new products, right?
I think the success of DCPS would argue against that, but carry on.
Yeah, but that's what's their minimum wage, dude? Where they are.
Again, you're right. They have made a choice. They've made a choice. Right.
That's not a choice. I live in San Francisco. I don't live somewhere else. I live here. This is that's not a choice, right?
Sure it is.
My parents moved here. I
grew up in Texas and then lived in California and then lived in New York. You made a choice.
I did not make a choice. It was an evolution of, well, yes, I did make a choice, but it was all an evolution.
Thank you. Can we just stop where you agreed with me?
Sure. Cool. All right. I see how this is going to go. All right.
Fair.
Okay.
That's totally fair. I want to get to something else in this interview, man. We're already 30 minutes in.
These are the bones. Like all the things that you just said right now, all the things that we're talking about are fundamentally, I think, the bones of everything else we're going to talk about. Because your cost of living, all of these things are all the fundamental part of retailing and your ability to be successful in retailing. You know, and the difference between a mom and pop store and a chain are fundamental things in comics retailing 2024. But I'm zipping. Go ahead, ask a different question.
But I would say every chain that I know of, at least in comics, started as a mom and pop store, and they made choices.
Sure,
right?
I tried to build a chain. I bought a second store. I tried to do it with a different model.
Sure,
the thing
I get
that
it.
I didn't want, and I'm like, I'm going to do this. And I gave it an honest effort. I was working 90, 100-hour weeks then, man.
I don't
And,
doubt it.
and shit didn't work, you know? But had it worked, I would, sure, let's have 12 stores. Let's have 20 stores. It's not sustainable where we are. It's not in our market, you know? And so there it is. Okay.
No, it's okay. Let's just want to move on because I don't think we're going to find a resolution here. Tell me about where you started. 1989, right?
Yeah.
Tell me talk to me about what led up to 1989. Who is Brian? I don't really know much about you other than you. I think you grew up in that area and you feel like there's no way for you to leave. But tell me about where are you in 1989? How did it get you there?
In 1989, I was 21 years old.
Okay.
But so let's back up. How did I get to 1989? Okay, so first off, I was born in Boone County, Missouri, which is probably not a thing that you would expect. That I'm actually a Midwesterner originally.
Did not come out of my
Only for like a year, and then my parents moved to New York, and I grew up in Brooklyn.
Did you? What part of Brooklyn? Do you know?
What neighborhood?
Do you know what part?
Yes, of course I know it. I grew up in Cobble Hill, but you know when you say that, no, that look on your face is why I don't go. And I grew up in Cobble Hill because Cobble Hill back then was a working class neighborhood that was pretty poor, to the point where basically half the neighborhood was Puerto Rican, the other half was working class Italian. I was the only blonde kid in the entire neighborhood. Right. And I got the shit kicked out of me left and right because I was blonde. Of all the things, right, you know, to get the, you know, and everybody gets the shit kicked out of them at some point. But,
sure.
But yeah, no, I went to PS 29 in Brooklyn. I'm a Brooklyn boy. And I think that, like, if you actually look at, like what I write and how I act and what I am, knowing that at the center, at the heart, I got that Brooklyn thing, you know, and this is Brooklyn in the 70s, right? Which was a fucked up place, you know? We were just back in New York for New York Comic Con, and my wife's like, well, let's go to Williamsburg. And I'm like, you want to go to Williamsburg? Are you insane? Because Williamsburg was a shithole. I mean, that really was not a place that you walked. That was not a thing, and now it's all yuppies everywhere, and it's.
I've only been here since 2011, and it is Williamsburg itself has changed dramatically in that time. But I can only imagine. Yeah,
but Cobble Hill was not what Cobble Hill is today. So you know, I very much have I'd say the rotten apple at my core, right? Because that's what we used to call New York back then, right?
Sure.
Because it was a failing thing that was, you know, and everybody was trying to make it better. And then my parents divorced because I actually love this part. It's because they were children of the 60s and they thought, oh, free love, and they thought that's not good for a relationship, for building a thing. And there's a lot of sex and drugs involved, and so my parents split up, and my mom stayed in New York and my dad moved out to San Francisco, kind of to make the maximum, I think,
the furthest possible place.
Yeah. And so I grew up here. On top of it, so I have that. So I have a little tiny core of Midwestern at the middle. Then I have that on top of it, and then I have the like it's San Francisco.
So you grew up with your dad, the hippie? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, he's not a hippie even a little bit. No, he was an engineer. He was an engineer for AT&T back when they had, you know, like wires and shit.
Yeah. And owned all of communication, right?
Exactly. Yeah. No. And then that's a whole nother story. So let's not go there. But yeah, no. And so then when I was 16 or so, I got my first job at Best of Two Worlds up on Haight Street, which is Bob Beerbaum's comic shop.
Right.
And within 6 months, it might have been 3 months, I was the manager of that store on Haight Street.
At 16?
Yeah, well, 17 probably 17? At that point. I mean, that was a long ass time ago, and I don't remember the exact things. Sure. And then at some point, I was asked to be the manager of the whole chain. And
how big was the chain?
I literally knew that I could do better than Beer Bomb. So okay, like if he wrote you your paycheck,
Yeah.
you could not take it to the bank. You had to cash it through the till because otherwise it would bounce for sure.
Oh no.
That was the kind of businessman he was, right? He
Yeah.
used to get great hay of talking about how he had this warehouse in Emeryville that the Gurneyville flood had wiped out. But the Gurneyville flood came nowhere near that warehouse. And what the actual issue was it was a warehouse that one part of it had a glass ceiling that had a hole in it. And so there was a constant leak, right? Like into the warehouse. But everyone knew that. So we would take all the shitty, terrible comics that nobody wanted to file or work with because they literally weren't worth anything. And we would put them there and we called that the pit. And so the pit kind of got bigger and bigger and bigger and was, if you went and did math on book value, you could go, this was worth X amount of dollars, but it was never worth X amount of dollars ever. It was all the garbage that nobody wanted. Yeah, there were a lot of comics in there. I'll tell you one last story. There was one night I was walking home because I lived relatively close to the store. I was walking home and I went, what the fuck? Why are the lights on the store on? That's not right. The lights should not, it's 3 a.m. The lights should be off. That is not a thing. So I walked over there and Beer Bomb was in there with some woman he had picked up hitchhiking on the freeway. And they were doing crank at 3 a.m. and rearranging the store as a person on crank at 3 a.m. rearranges the store. Like, these covers are yellow. Put all the yellow ones together. And so, I was like, I can do better than him.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, there are plenty of stories about Bob Beerbomb who just recently passed. Speak ill of the dead.
I
but
feel bad.
Plenty of stories.
Yes, but I've never not told these stories, and I'm not going to stop now. But I mean, I was a 16-year-old punk, and he took a chance on me. I mean, so literally, that's the thing that set my course in so many ways, right? Because I thought I can do better than this. I understood all of the economic premises of the business, right? And, the concept, because this was back in the days, this would be 85, 86, 87, somewhere in there, probably 85. And, we bought cases of X-Men as a store. Cases.
Right.
Multiple cases of X-Men. And you didn't sell them all in the first 30 days at all. But you knew for a fact that the 75-cent X-Men comic, I think it was 75. Yeah, it was 75 cents. You'd be able to sell it for $1 later as a back issue, right? Sure. And it was because there were not 20,000 comic books coming out every week. I exaggerate. But there was certainly only one X-Men comic coming out fortnightly at that point, right?
Right.
Wow. Actually, that might have even been when there was still only Uncanny X-Men as a comic book. Yeah. In fact, it almost certainly was. And so you could sell X-Men as a back issue all day and all night. And not only could you sell it as a back issue, you could sell it as a back issue as a premium. I know that 75 cents to $1 doesn't sound like a premium, but that's, that's all of the margin in the world, right?
Sure. It's an additional third.
The math on that is that fucking works, right? You can buy, there was probably at that point, no Marvel comic that sold less than 50 copies. And I mean, the worst, most stinkiest, terrible Marvel comic sold 50 copies. So you could always get 60 copies because you would sell those back issues sooner or later at a premium price. And then if it got hot, you could go, oh, this one's $2. That one's $3, right? The math on that, it maths. That's mathing math, right?
Sure.
That quickly went away. All of that.
Well, of course. I mean, it sounds to me like what you're saying You know, if I really step back from it, is part of what you're saying is that there was an unmet demand that a very few number of titles were filling. I mean, right now, like you could say there are more people reading comics now than there were then, but they are just reading so many different things, and they might have been available to read more of those different things, but they only had X-Men and Batman and Spider-Man, right? That was what they had.
If we're talking outside of the Marvel and DC hegemony, yeah, absolutely,
Sure.
right. I don't think that we're in a better place selling 16 different X-Men comics that each sell 50,000 copies, including variants, than we were selling one X-Men comic that was selling more than 500,000 copies. Even though you may be selling more comics to more people, the labor and the time and all of the thing degrades the ROI on that. So I would strongly suggest we're in a significantly worse place from that level of expansion than we were otherwise.
Better or worse is really such a subjective thing because it depends on where you are standing, right? A publisher would say that that's not necessarily the case. They're going to be selling to more people. A distributor would definitely not say that's the case because they're going to be selling to more people.
Yeah,
I think people who want to create IP for a larger market are definitely not going to say that because it completely limits the number of times they get to produce. So what I would say is you are talking about a very narrow definition.
The ROI is the ROI at the end of the day, and
I don't think that's how math works, man. Sorry, there's too many people involved.
I mean, look, IP is a completely different question that I cannot speak to because I am not in the IP business. I don't know nothing about IP. That's not the thing that I'm doing. But when
I would argue you are in the IP business, but you are choosing not to be involved in that. That's fair.
Sure, I'm in the creative content business, which I guess is technically IP, but
I don't know how you would define that differently.
People who think about what they do that way almost never succeed creatively.
Oh, that's a hard disagree. I can name many people who have succeeded well beyond financially succeeded well beyond anything you and I will ever do, and I can tell you many people outside of comics. I mean, that are doing very well, thinking differently than that. So yeah, I would hard disagree with that.
Cool. Let's get into that as we go.
Let's see. I'd love to understand.
That'll be the next 45 minutes of what we talk about.
Right? I'd love to understand comics experience a little better, right?
Yeah,
so let's talk about it. You've talked about how it is more of a bookstore model.
Yeah.
How would you say it compares with what you referred to earlier as a traditional comic shop, right? How does what you're running now compare to, let's call it the average?
Well, I mean, so the average today is different than the average in 1989 is, right? Like, when I talk about those things, it will be in the context of how did the market work then? The market worked then that, again, you bought your periodical, but you could continue to sell it as a back issue for 5-10 years, and you would get an increasing amount of money as time went on. So the math on that works. That stopped happening, I don't know, 20 years ago? I mean, something along those lines. Where back issues started becoming common back issues, started becoming an anchor on small stores. Would you agree with that as a premise?
Common back issues became an anchor of. Well, okay.
Yeah,
we're going back to like 90s.
In other words, the latest issue of Captain Marvel, a not very good selling comic, if you don't sell them and you have to bag and board them and put them in a box, it will probably sit in that box for 2 or 3 or 5 years.
Sure, yeah. All right, so mid-90s.
You can't raise the price enough to justify the amount of time that you did to that, right? This is a mathing thing, right?
Yeah, okay.
And once that started happening as a thing, it became clear to me, well, it became clear to me a little bit before that, but that wasn't a model that worked, because the things that people were buying, the things that were popular, which let's say, was Watchmen, was Dark Knight, was John Byrne X-Men, was blah 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 blah. Those are the things that people are buying as back issues. That enough that it's worth thinking about it, spending your time as a business trying to seek those things. But you could never sustain a constant flow of them, right? Like it. I can't guarantee I'm always going to have all 12 issues of Watchmen in stock, right? It's like it's not possible. It's especially not possible today, but it wasn't even possible back in 1998, let's say. What I could guarantee you though is I would have all 12 issues in a single book, right?
Okay.
I could guarantee you that. I mean, absolutely. I mean, especially after DC went to Diamond. Before DC went to Diamond exclusive, right? That was not the case. It was not the case. You would call Diamond, you would call Capital City, you would call Friendly Franks, you would call blah, you would call all of the distributors, and who actually had a copy of Watchmen to sell you was maybe. There were definitely weeks where we would go, we could not restock Watchmen because none of the 6 distributors, I think, direct market distributors at that point that we were using that were viable in terms of shipping, had Watchmen, right? And I want to be in the Watchmen business. Ultimately, at the end of the day, because that's a work of power and beauty and is in print and is sustainable and people want it going on and on and on. So to me, that's what the book model is, right? The book model business is going for perennial stock items that you can sell all the time forever and ever and ever. And look, part of my thinking on this was in 1989, periodical comics were a certain way, but by the time we got to 1990X, and I don't remember the year, Marvel was publishing everything with giant muscles and shoulder pads, and Captain America was not Captain America anymore. And they were publishing shit that people just didn't want creatively, and I don't mean just Marvel. I mean all of the publishers that's like when Batman was replaced by Azrael, right? Like that sold for like 5 minutes.
Sure.
But then after that, the audience went, "No, I don't want this. This is not what I want in my serial fiction." And so finding that next perennial looked to me to be almost impossible in the world of Azrael Batman and mullet Superman, right?
Right. Although it's fun to me now that we have a whole generation of collectors that are just like driving up the value is probably a little more aggressive than is true, but like those are in demand. It's an in demand period of craziness because they look back on the craziness and they want a piece of that. I always, listen,
Sure.
we're old men and it's hard to understand young people.
No, it's very easy to understand. Well, it's very, 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 very easy to understand nostalgia.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
But was it and I would argue to you as strongly as I possibly can, the reason that we have comic book stores is because of nostalgia. Everybody who owns a comic book store, not everybody, but most of the old guys who own a comic book store do it because they wanted to be able to keep touching those old comics all the time. They wanted to build that clubhouse of the thing that they loved, that they wanted to do. The place, if I were to pick one place where I diverged from my peers earlier than almost anyone else did, because not everybody, there's a lot of stores that are like mine now, right? Like,
sure,
you've most of the people you've interviewed probably are.
No, I'd argue against that. I wouldn't say they're like yours. I would say that probably maybe half of the stores that I've interviewed, maybe half of them, I would say are like yours.
I would say more than half, but maybe it's because those are the people that I listen to the interviews for.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. It's self-selecting.
There's a certain amount of selection bias there, absolutely. But
maybe I'm not understanding. So let's talk about mechanics, right?
Sure.
What percentage of your sales are single issues? 25-30%,
something like that. Yeah.
Right.
It's actually it's probably more like 35%. It's probably 35%.
That's
It's
a solid. It's a
yeah,
solid chunk.
yeah,
You would miss it if it was gone.
yeah. No. We would not be able to survive without.
Sure.
And so this is the thing. I keep all of my employees think they work in a bookstore, and I keep telling them, no, but you actually work in a comic book store.
Yeah.
And so you've really, really, really gotta, where you can, push and support and promote the serialization, because so we talked about how the original math was getting high selling periodicals that continue to sell as back issues. After that, the next business model becomes getting things that are serialized, that underwrite, that amortize the cost of production, and then go on to become perennial books that make money forever, right? So it's in our best interest as a bookstore to really, really promote, say, Kieran Gillen's Power Fantasy, right? And to get people on board to it now, so that it is a sustainable periodical comic that will eventually become a book that we will make all fucking kinds of money from.
Sure.
And all of the money that we make from it as a book is all free money to us, because we already paid all of the costs. He paid the costs as a creative endeavor, but we also paid the costs of racking and promotion and the mind space part of it.
Creating a market for that book inside of your market, right? Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
This is the first place I discovered this was with Sandman, right?
Yeah,
because we were one of the first 20, 25 stores that was promoting Sandman as a periodical comic. Like, holy shit, this is the comic you should be buying as a periodical comic. And then Rolling Stone picked it up, right? And it became the graphic novel. And that, in a lot of ways, really kicked off the market change and the understanding of the biggest direct market publishers of what the potential was for making money from the longer term view of a book, right?
Sure.
You serialize it, then you make all kinds of fucking money selling the collection of it.
Right.
Where was I going with that? I was going somewhere interesting with that. But so we learned really kind of early on, because Sandman, when we opened, I want to say Sandman 3 had come out that month, and then we had a signing with Neil Gaiman before anyone knew who Neil Gaiman was at all. Like, he came to San Francisco and he slept on my couch, was how no one knew who Neil Gaiman was, because that would not happen today in any way, shape, or form. But so that kind of learning that part of it, of like, well, this is maybe where we should be chasing the money, right? Like, we should be promoting this thing. And that was the first way that we changed the store. But currently my staff doesn't necessarily, I mean, they understand it intellectually. Like, I can explain it to them like this, and they go, oh, sure, Dad, that makes a lot of fucking sense. And yet we're going to do it this way. And I get that. But to me, that's where the sustainable model for the creator actually is in serializing your work as a periodical in the direct market and amortizing your expenses, or at worst, breaking even on your creative expenses, and then the book becomes all gravy. As opposed,
I would say that a large portion, though, at worst, I would do push back on that. I think that your at worst is not the at worst. I would say that more than half, if I do the math right, more than half of the periodicals on your shelves are not amortizing the A&E on those single issues. Right?
Sure. But then why is that, right? And the reason why, I believe, is there are far too many SKUs on the market. Far too many. There are probably 5 to 8 times the number of SKUs that the market can sustain being trying to put out as serialized books.
I just don't see that as a bad thing.
Okay. I mean, it brought our average sales down from, as I said, we never sold less than 50 copies of a Marvel comic ever. Now we never sell less than 0. Right? And so I can only draw a one-to-one
but it's your
line
average.
between those
But it's
people.
your average per. You're not concerned. I don't think. I don't understand why you would be concerned about your average per line item, like not necessarily per line item for
Yeah.
say per property, right?
Yeah.
Your concern is your average sale at the POS. Your concern is your average revenue.
Because as I say, I think that the only way sustainably that this market actually, that the creative part of the market works, is if a creator can make money serializing the work or at least break even. Sure, okay. Well, and we can talk more about this. I don't think that the graphic novel model actually works. When I look at what most people get paid, what the advance is, and how they have to spread that advance over time, when you start doing the math, most of those people are making federal minimum wage, which is like $8 an hour, right? That's not a way you create more creators in the business. Okay. I think if I were to give one criticism overall to Diamond Comics, and I'm always happy to do that.
You sure
No.
are.
No,
Yeah,
actually,
and that's punching down at this point.
I'm one of Diamond's biggest supporters, honest to God.
Right.
But it would be, wow, did you fuck up by not trying to find the next bone? Wow, did you fuck up by double downing on Marvel and DC as the only thing to go, because Bone makes more
How
money.
many hundreds of publishers would not be around if Diamond Comics was not there? I'm going to push back hard on this one. Give me a minute to rant.
Wait.
How many? Do you know how badly this industry is going to suffer when Diamond Comics stops producing or stops distributing? It's all of the, and it's not because of Marvel and DC. It's not because the mid-tier publishers. They're going to be fine. It's all those lower ones that had the opportunity to find the next Bone that they gave an opportunity to, and they continued to, and that you're still punching down on them on this is wrong.
Yeah. So the difference to me is that Diamond never invested in getting people who actually thought or particularly cared about, that's a little harsh, the actual creative product of the medium, not just the is it economically viable question, but does this move the goalpost forward, right? We've had this discussion online.
Yeah, and what your take is complete bullshit, and you're extrapolating from what you think their motivations were.
Let's talk, dude.
Okay, carry on.
Actually talk. Then you can say,
all right, go ahead.
Okay, so
all right.
Fundamentally, when Capital City was still in the game, now this was 25 years ago, right? Their editorial vision in terms of how they put out their catalog was, we're going to try and promote comics that we as a team think are really good. Diamond's never promoted comics they think are good, ever. There is no time ever that Diamond has ever promoted comics they think are good. Right?
No.
You're right that they've done
wrong.
a lot to...
I disagree. I know the people at Diamond, and I know that they have promoted the comics that they think
that Diamond promoted that they thought was good.
I'm not going to bother answering the question because you're going to interrupt.
I won't interrupt. Go ahead.
There are plenty of people at Diamond. There are plenty of publishers who get turned away because the stuff is not good, because there's no plan. There are plenty of people at Diamond who only are invested in trying to sell things that you can sell. There are plenty of people invested at Diamond who support and encourage and grow and give assets to publishers. If there are any success stories in comics, period, and you and I both know there are hundreds, it's because of Diamond Comics, all of which says that everything you just said is straight wrong.
Yeah. Okay. So the place that I will disagree with you is that, yes, they have given space to things, but in terms of things that someone there thinks are good, that is not a message that Diamond has ever put out whatsoever. They have never, ever said, this is a good comic, so you should support it.
Is that space free?
What?
Is that space free?
Is my space free?
No. You said they give space to these things. Is that
Yes.
space that they give, is it free?
Relative to the amount of money that they were making from previews, hell the fuck yeah, it was.
As
Hell
incorrect.
the fuck yeah, it was.
That is an incorrect. That shows a complete misunderstanding of what they had to do and why they're in trouble now.
Okay.
But that's okay. You don't understand those mechanics, and that's fine.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Dude, you're wrong. Okay, that's fine.
I'm not wrong.
You're totally fucking wrong.
No, you're making these blanket statements
that are
inarguably wrong because you're basing them on someone else's motivation.
They will happily sell us a comic that is terrible.
Sure, that you think is terrible.
They can make money off of.
You think they will happily sell a comic that you think is terrible.
That I think that objectively is not good comics that will make money for the next 20 years. Come on, man. You know that there are things that are getting published and being put out there that have no sustainable future in any way, shape, or form. I don't want to start naming names because I could, baby. But what's the point of that? I don't want to insult my friends, my peers.
Yeah, dude, because it's a naive way to look at business.
It's
naive to think that you hire someone full-time and you support them. Yeah. Are you saying that everything that comes into your store is something that you believe it will be necessary and valuable for the next 20 years? You're investing the time and money of those people who are selling it. Are you saying right now, because that sounds what the whole standard you're holding them up to, are you saying you hold yourself to that standard? Everything in your store you bought knowing that. No, let me finish. Sure. I just want to know.
Yeah. Are you finished?
Yeah, go.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes. I believe that our intention when bringing a piece of book of any comic into the store that we are spending our money on to rack and promote and do the things, yes, is hopefully something that is going to be sustainable over the long haul, and we have aesthetic reasons that we ascribe to do that. If Zoe and Kat were here, I'm pretty sure they'd say the same thing.
Are they ever wrong?
We're very fucking conscious about curating what we have and to bring it in and to do things that can sell. Do they all work? Hell no, they don't all work. Of course not. We're dealing in creative things, not widgets. What I'm saying is it is my belief that Diamond is actually in the widget business, not in the creative business.
Let's pause for a moment on the Diamond judgment. And let's go back to everything that you've just said, how it applies to comic experience. Okay?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do customers pre-order things from you that you don't believe fit that criteria?
Who cares?
That's a question. I think it is pertainable to this question.
So the answer to that is, yes, of course.
Exactly.
Of fucking course. Of course. I don't care whether someone else has what my taste is. I don't care if someone literally. You
don't see how this connects? You don't see how that connects to Diamond?
I do not see how this connects.
Okay.
No.
All right.
No, because what we promote, what we put our time into, what we push are the things that we think are going to grow things. There is too many comics coming out every single week.
Let's see.
I want to say last week was 122 new comic books.
Yeah.
How can anyone fucking sell that? How can anyone? That is not.
You're gonna curate. Everybody curates. Diamond curates. The publishers curate.
Diamond does not fucking curate. Diamond does not.
Okay.
Diamond will take anybody who's got money. That's their curation.
You're wrong.
Anyone who's got money.
You're 100% wrong. I know this because they hire me.
Sure.
They try to hire me, and I say, I'm sorry, I cannot. I'm saying that there are plenty of people out there with money who are being turned away every day, every year.
Diamond doesn't think they can make $1 off it.
You are wrong.
That's why, not for any other reason. If Diamond thought that they could make $1, they would bring that book in.
You're wrong.
Okay. You would need to show me some proof of that.
No, I don't. You're just wrong.
I'm not wrong. I can see what's in the catalog. I can see what
But you
and
don't
how
see
they
what's not in
push.
the catalog. You don't
Sure,
see
dude.
what's not in the catalog.
Yeah.
So everything that you're saying doesn't pertain to
Yes.
what's not in the catalog.
The shit that's not in the catalog that anyone has ever showed me, as I've asked many, 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 many times over
Okay.
the last 35 years, is trash garbage that nobody wants.
Okay.
So if you have some sort of a book that's like, here's a book that actually people would want, and Diamond went, no way, we don't want that. I would love to hear that, because I've never heard that from any other human being.
No, that's not what
ever
you
in
said.
35
You
years.
said anybody with money is in the
Uh-huh.
catalog.
No,
That is what you said.
Anything that Diamond thinks they can make money from. That is not anyone with money.
No, well,
Plenty
A,
of people
that's,
who
I
have
mean, there is going to
money.
be a transcript and we can both go back and look at it. But B,
Okay.
that, again, I would disagree with both statements, but I will say that that I know for certain at least one of those statements is wrong, because I can name who they are. I'm guessing the other because I know the people who are making those decisions, and and I've had conversations with them about how they make those decisions.
Okay.
So what I will say is, I know for certain in my heart that you are wrong about this. And I think that we are suffering right this second from an incredible risk to our industry, our way of life, whatever, because of that assumption about their motivations.
Wow.
And I think that is what has led us to a place where your voice has over-indexed on this and has been a problem.
What the fuck are you talking about, man? In public spaces, among my peers, I am one of the biggest Diamond supporters.
That is wrong. In public spaces, among your peers, you're one of the biggest Diamond supporters.
In my peer spaces, I am one of the biggest and first people to go, you don't understand what Diamond's doing. You have to help. You have to support them more. The people who are like, oh, my comics came damaged. Oh, no, that's the biggest thing in the world. Fuck you. You guys don't understand anything about how distribution works. Nah, yeah, dude, no.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No.
You're in. I don't need to pull up times in public spaces where you have not been that. It would be easy to do, and anybody who's watching this can. I'm just saying, you have been a voice on this, and I will say that the voices on this have led us into a place where that is trepidatious. It's a problem.
Yeah. Okay. So I will so largely agree with sort of the second part of that, which is, and we talked about this online, and we should talk about this publicly.
Sure.
Diamond does phenomenal things for the business. Diamond is an essential cog in this. Diamond's banking services, as it were.
Sure.
Without them, there would not be a comic book industry, full stop, period. Even recently, there would not be a comic book industry, full stop, period.
100%.
Diamond's choice during pandemic to shut down, I absolutely think was the correct choice for a large majority of the stores. I understand there was a minority that didn't work for, but absolutely, I think that was the right thing to do. And I think that Marvel and DC and Dark Horse and Image and IDW all effectively pulling out of the direct market system was the worst mistake. And I will never, ever, ever, ever stop blaming DC for setting that course of dominoes. It was the worst choice that was made in the last 24 years of publishing in this business, because 25 years ago was when they went to Diamond. It's the worst decision made since then. And I don't think that anyone actually understands even a little bit what Diamond actually was bringing to the table, despite many people's very, very true problems with how Diamond operated in the smaller level. But on the micro level, that was the word I was looking for. But on the macro level, no, Diamond is so critical. And the fact that there are multiple reasons right now that make it look like Diamond's in serious, serious trouble, I think are the single scariest thing to me, to make me wonder, is it possible I'm still viable in 5 years, right? Because if diamond is not viable in 5 years, I literally do not know that it is possible that my store is viable. So that part of it, I'll absolutely 100% agree with you in every way, shape, or form. This is one of the reasons why I say that I think that I'm one of Diamond's biggest supporters. I take shots, of course I do, because I care, because I wanted to make it better. That's the reason it's the reason you criticize this shit, right? To make it better, right? Like, not to bring them down, to bring them up.
I think the way one place in there and all of that, I absolutely agree. But I think the one place where I disagree is attributing motivation.
Mm-hmm.
And you like to do that. You've done it a few times now in this conversation, where you're attributing motivation to someone's choices when you don't have access to the data that they had. You don't have access to the understandings that they had or what they needed. What I'm saying is, I think that is, and I guess what I'm trying to get, once we both have calmed down a little bit, what I'm trying to say is that when you ascribe motivations to these decisions, you do sketch with your kind of platform, good guy, bad guy status.
But I own a comic book store. I literally, all I do is think about, with great power comes great responsibility. Literally, that is all I think about.
Sure.
All fucking times, right?
Yeah.
And this is 35 years of experience, if you'll forgive the pun, sort of, that leads me to these conclusions. This is not things that I come to lightly, and if challenged in any kind of a way that I can see any kind of data that would suggest otherwise, I will change my mind. I've changed my mind on so many things. If you go back and read those columns from 1992, right? Yeah. There's a bunch of shit there that I would not say today in any way, shape, or form, right?
Yeah. Let's go to that. It'd be nice to change the subject. Cool. Let's talk about tilting at windmills.
Literally everything is, let's change the subject. All right. Cool. All right.
No, I had a lot that I wanted to cover, and we're already an hour in. So
it's like 15 minutes. This is a good conversation, right? Like,
I know, buddy. I know. All right. Yeah. You've been doing this column since 1992, 91, something like that.
Somewhere in there, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What causes you to start writing? I've read I went back and glanced at it. I've reread it recently, that first one. What caused you to decide that was a shot you wanted to take?
A shot I wanted to take. Well, I mean, so okay, we got to go back to the Comic Buyer's Guide, right?
Yes.
Which was a weekly print publication that was basically the internet of its day.
100%.
Basically,
it was like a newspaper, right?
It was a newspaper, right? It was a tabloid newspaper that folded out, right? And it was a thing, and there was a letters column there that was, again, essentially the internet of its day. It was all the people opinionating, and it was the commons, right? And so I wrote a letter, because I was writing letters to the Journal at the same time, and Into Blood and Thunder, which was the other version of that, but that was the much more left version of it. And so I wrote a letter in that was, I titled it "Ethics in the Comics Industry." And, and my understanding of ethics then was what a 23-year-old's understanding of ethics is, right? I really like, so, you can say, hey, Brian, you don't know what you're talking about. When I was 23, I really, really didn't know what I was talking about. And I can read it now and go, yeah, no, dude, this part is wrong and that part is wrong. Your heart's in the right place here, kid. But yeah. And anyway, and the CPG decided that they liked it enough that they ran it as an actual opinion piece rather than as a letter. Also, because it was really long. This is even going back then, I developed this annoying habit of writing way too much.
Yeah.
I cannot function on like a Twitter or a Blue Sky where you've got 300 characters. Dude, I need 1,200 words just to get started.
As someone who has tried recently to read some of the newer stuff, I'm going to admit I've used ChatGPT to summarize. I'm not going to.
Cool. All right. ChatGPT's probably got it wrong, but cool. But anyway, so the CBG ran it as an actual opinion piece. This is what I call tilting at windmill zero. And I got a phone call at the store one afternoon. The phone rang, and I'm like, "Hi, Comics Experience. Is this Brian Hibbs?" Yes, this is Brian Hibbs. Kid, this is Harlan Ellison.
Oh shit!
Right, right. Kid, this is Harlan Ellison. Oh, yes, sir. Because I don't, I'm nobody. What is this guy calling me for? I just want to tell you that I really thought that was a goddamn strong piece, and that you need to keep writing. You need to keep saying these things over and over again, kid. Yes, sir. Yes, I'll do that. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Whatever you say, sir. And that was pretty much the conversation, because he went like, cool, all right, goodbye, kid, and hung up, right? Because that's Harlan Ellison.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I was like, well, then I need to clearly, if someone who is a writer of that caliber calls you up and says, you need to keep saying shit, well, then I need to keep saying shit.
Yeah.
And so they were just starting Comics Retailer magazine at around that same point. And I went, well, I mean, Harlan said that I should. I guess I can start. I think I can write something every month that says what's in my head. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I did that, and, and I really took the fact that Harlan, the reason he called me was not because he thought my prose was amazing, right? I'm pretty sure the reason that he called me was because he thought that I was mining something that needed to be mined, and very quickly I realized there were other writers who were doing kind of similar stuff. Like my 8th or 9th column was about the expansion of titles for an IP, right? Like, okay, so let's publish the 9th Spider-Man. Well, it was not at that point. It was the 4th Spider-Man title or the 5th Spider-Man title. And I found this column by, I see this is the worst part about doing this on air, that I can't now go and look. He was writing for Creepy or Eerie magazine. And he wrote Joe Brancatelli. I'm pretty sure I pronounced that right. And he was writing when Spectacular Spider-Man started. He's like, it's a really bad idea to do a second Spider-Man title. And he gave all this really good reasoning of, it's going to cost you, if your cost to produce it is 1, it's going to cost you 1.5 to produce a second title, but your actual sales are only going to be 1.3. And he was looking at the sales charts when he did that. And I'm like, that's hell of right. That's completely correct. That's what I'm seeing in my store. As you add more and more and more books to a family, you sell fewer and fewer and fewer numbers of people. The people who are staying buy more and more stuff, which is cool, but eventually you burn those customers out and they stop buying comics entirely, right? And so it's conceptually better to sell more people fewer titles. I think that's what the math seems to be telling me, as I understand how it's mathed over the years.
I would say the history has told us something different, but that's fair.
Outside of, a Spider-Man #1 by Todd McFarlane, no, I don't know that that's actually true. Books spike up, but then they go down below where throughout the period that we have access to Diamond sales charts, which stopped several years ago. But throughout that period, you can see the numbers spike up at #1, but by the time they're at #3, they're lower than they were before.
I don't believe there's anything you can actually learn from those charts.
Wow.
But that's where we're gonna, because I've been doing the project that we're working on. I've dug so deeply into the process of how those charts were made. I just don't think there is anything real there.
The thing you got to do when you look at those old charts, and it's hard, it's almost impossible now. But at the time when I was actually paying attention to those charts, you don't look at them as an objective, this is what the chart is. You have to, in your head, go, this is a first week book and this is a fourth week book.
Yeah.
And first week books have the entire month worth of sales and fourth week books don't. But you see, back then, books were first week books and fourth week books, unlike today where books are whatever week they show up is fine. And in fact, I can even say that when New 52 happened, right? One of the big pushes for New 52 was Batman's a first week book, Superman's the third week book, whatever the actual number was. And sales, I think, not only spiked because of New 52, but they stayed where they were for much, much longer than me or any other analysis thought they were going to, because the shipping weeks were respected.
Oh, I agree with that. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, the shipping weeks I think they're crucial for marketing those kinds of sequential books. My pushback is, having spent a deep dive on the process of those sales charts, I feel confident in saying that there's not much you can learn from studying them. But you can
see what Spider-Man sold month after month after month, and you could go, here are the things that are working and here's the things that aren't.
Yeah, but you weren't getting an accurate view of what it was actually selling.
But you didn't need to, because overall sell-in is sell-through.
It didn't matter. It was not an accurate view of sell-in.
Okay.
I'm just saying. I do believe I'm speaking from a place of understanding here.
I would love to have long conversations with you about this. I've had a multiple decades worth of long conversations with JJ Miller about this.
Yeah, and I've talked to JJ
while they were happening. He and I talked about this shit all the time, and
he was using algorithms. He wasn't using data.
Sure. More often than not, I believe that it was giving you a generally good picture of what was happening.
And
more often than not. Okay.
Having had very hard detail.
That's a legitimate disagreement, as opposed to the other things you said, which you were just wrong on.
Yeah, well, I'm saying, having had hard data in front of me and compared it to what both he and Milton were doing, I can say that they were not accurate.
Okay.
And they were not even accurate relationally to each other. But it doesn't really matter.
But they were month to month, so I don't know how that's possible.
Impossible.
Month to month they were, though.
They could probably tell you what overall was being sold per month. Sure.
Okay.
But they weren't telling you specifically issue to issue or what each individual issue was doing. All they were telling you was the ranking. They were just using a made-up number to give you the ranking.
Sure,
and that's fine.
Okay.
All right. So, looking back on now.
Was there another question you want to ask about tilting at windmills?
Yes, I did. I'm trying to regroup my head. Looking back on that whole process, that 30 plus years of writing this, and it looks like you're now down to like one a year or so.
I mean, it's mostly the book scan numbers because I know that I have to do those at this point.
Sure.
And then I want to write more.
You have a business to run.
I'm getting old, man.
I know, baby. I get it.
I don't want to work 80 and 90 hour weeks anymore. I just don't. I'm old. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I feel you. No need to apologize. When you look back on it, what do you think legacy wise? What is the outcome of that? Right? How does that, do you look at the effects of that project for you?
Well, I mean, I don't know that I thought of it as a project, right? It's downloading what's in my head, right? It's tilting at windmills. I mean, it's literally named that because I know that I can't win, right? Like I'm not actually fighting a dragon, man. It's like, hey, what's that over there? Let's go get it, right? Like I know that I'm gonna lose. I know. And I didn't, I had never read Cervantes then, right? Like I like the image of it, So what's the results of that project? I don't know. I wasn't looking for results. I just wanted to campfire rule this shit. I want to leave it better than I found it. That's the only thing that I care about, dude.
100%.
I want comics to be better than I found them. And I think I think in many, many, many ways they are significantly better than I found them, and I think my voice has helped get them there in many, many ways. But I also feel like we've lost almost every battle that actually mattered at the end of the day. You know,
That's such a tough viewpoint.
I mean, I'm a comic book retailer for 35 years. What else is my viewpoint going to be? You know?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that if you were an independent bookstore during that period, it would be a lot worse.
Oh, probably, sure. But I'm not an independent bookstore. I'm a comic book store.
100%.
And so I I mean, to me, the actual problems are, what DC unleashed when they pulled out a diamond, right? Because comic book retailers had earned and worked for, not just earned, worked for and gotten a whole goddamn lot of wins over the years with Diamond, right? Like in terms of how processes worked, in terms of what the expectations were, in terms of how and when things were invoiced and what happened when you placed an order and what the information that you got. And could you rely on that information? I mean, there's a litany of things that Diamond did to make retailing better. And I believe that most of that got completely fucking thrown out of the window once we started adding distributors, because then suddenly there's no central authority anymore, and no one's actually in control or has the not even the moral authority, but the what's the non-moral authority? I mean, it's just authority, but like the ability to enforce shit, right? Like,
Yeah.
Right? Like, cause that's important for someone to go, yeah, no, dude, you can't sell comics early. You just literally can't do that.
Well, apparently you can.
Apparently you can today, right? And no one actually seems to care. And not merely do the distributors not seem to care, but the publishers don't seem to care. Now, I'm sure that there are individuals, to the thing you were saying before, I'm sure there are individuals at all the companies who really, really care in fundamental ways. That message is not getting out. It's not filtering down. It's not happening. And I think that's where things have gotten worse and weaker over the decades. Is that there's not like we had won a lot of fights about a lot of particular things, and now we're having to relitigate those fights. And I don't understand why we have to relitigate those fights, because the reason we won those fights is because we were wrong. We were wrong because they were wrong. We were right. And they understood that, and everybody was on the same page. I don't
know. Here's the only pushback I'm going to give here, and I feel like you and I I feel like there is a tone of demonizing Diamond that left an opening for someone like Lunar to come in, for someone like PRH to come in. It was a tone that publishers got from retailers that, well, these guys won't care because they fucking hate Diamond. So I will just do this. I will say there is a tone, and I know this for certain because I have heard it from publishers. I have heard it over and over again.
So
and I will say you have been a part of that tone.
Let's
truthfully
both be specific in general with this. I cannot think of any time ever that I remember retailers saying to DC, Diamond is your problem. I literally cannot ever think of any time ever in the history of ever that's
you are not paying
happened.
attention. You are not paying attention. You haven't been. I've heard that. I've literally heard retailers say that too. And you and I have been in the room when they've said that.
Problem.
You and I have been in the room when they have said that. That is disingenuous.
I have never heard that in 35 years. That it is Diamond's problem. Diamond is the reason that your comics are selling less.
That is a memory issue for you, my friend. Because
I do smoke a lot of weed. There's no doubt about that.
Well, let's deal with the first one of these, because I do want to deal with this. an understanding of where we are as opposed to where we could have been.
Sure.
Yeah. When they first started, you were a very vocal critic of Lunar Distribution, taking on the job that they took on.
Yep.
They've been at it for a few years now. What do you think of their job?
They're terrible. They're fucking awful.
How are they awful?
So, okay. So let's start the other way. How are they good?
Okay.
They are good. They pack boxes immaculate. Like chef's kiss. The boxes are packed. They've got so much packing material. There's nothing you could take a rocket launcher and fire at a lunar box and the comics would come through, right? I've never once ever received a damaged comic because of UPS or FedEx damage to the box kind of thing. What I have received, which hasn't changed one tiny fucking bit, is when the guy who's putting the comics in the box doesn't put them exactly perfectly level, and he puts them at an angle, and the books bend and they curve, and there's damage. There's internal damage, right? But the external part of it, they were light years beyond what Diamond was. It was never an actual issue of Diamond, except for people who were like, we can only sell 10.0 comics. They've got to be 9.8 or better, or else all of our customers will reject them. Fuck you. Seriously, fuck you. Fuck you. The only thing that matters is what's between the pages, man. There's some fussy little bitches. Ignore those fussy little bitches, because those fussy little bitches are the guys who cost you all of your time and all of your money, and every single member of your staff hates those fussy guys. They're like, oh, dude, it's John. Fuck, I don't want to be here when John. I got to go to the bathroom. You run the store, right? And you're laughing because you know I'm right about
I've been there. Yeah, I know John. I know him exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, fuck those guys. But Lunar understood the percentage of retailers who were, we've got to only have perfect comics on our shelves. I would put to you that in the last decade plus, maybe, but about the decade, there are an awful lot of stores that are carrying so few rack copies. Few.
That's a real problem.
It actually truly does matter to those individual stores that the books are all sellable. Now, I have a difference in opinion. That's the fuck you of what sellable is or not. But I get the people who get 3 copies of Batman and one of them was damaged, and that's a big deal. That's a third of their stock of Batman. I get it. On the other hand, you should be selling more than 3 copies of Batman, dude. I mean, if you want to call yourself a comic shop, I'm sorry, it's Batman. Even I sell 20 copies of Batman, and we don't care about periodical comics. Jesus.
Sure.
Where was I going with this? I
don't know. Lunar.
Oh, Lunar, right. Okay, so that's where they're really, 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 really good. Is that packing for external damages? They are the best at that for sure. They don't seem to actually understand what a distributor's job is, or how a distributor works, or what a distributor needs to do. From my point of view as a customer who interacts with a distributor purely on that level. For example, they will consistently tell me, this book is available right now to order. And so I will order it, and then it'll come back. The invoice, the order will come in, and it won't have book X or book Y or book Z. Why is that? Oh, we're out of it. Well, then why did you fucking tell me it wasn't available? Right? That never fucking happens to Diamond. When Diamond says that a book is available, that book is available. Now, sure. There's like a 1% edge case where like, oh, there was an error, something happened, someone mispacked it, no problem. That is not the fucking case in Lunar, right? Lunar also fundamentally doesn't trust the retailer, right? And like, for example, returns. If you say that a book is damaged, you need to send them a photographic proof of that. The fuck are you talking about photographic proof? I don't have the time and energy to sit there and start photographing damages and hope that they show up on the camera, right? Like, I'm not a photographer. I don't know how that shit works. My staff, we're here to sell comics. We're not here to prove to you that something that you sent to me is not correct. you should be able to look at my account and go, how often does Brian say something's damaged? Yeah, like 1 in 1,000 times, because I don't fucking care. I don't care about a 9.6. I care about a 7, right? As long as you meet a 7, it goes on my fucking shelf, right? So there's a lot of stuff like that where Lunar is just, they don't seem to get what a retailer needs, or at least this retailer needs. And I've been doing it in a particular way for 35 years. And so I'm a little set in my ways, and maybe I'm wrong. It's entirely fucking possible I'm wrong, dude. But every other distributor works with me, right? Like if Penguin Random House does it the same way that I want to, Simon & Schuster does, Hachette does, HarperCollins does, Scholastic does, why can't Lunar? Why can't I tell Lunar there's no such thing as a back order? Either you send it to me when I order it, or the order is canceled. That's it. Those are the 2 states. Every other distributor operates in that way. When you tell them,
I thought Diamond had back orders, but I'm working on.
No. You can, when you send in your order, there's a check mark on the thing. Do you want back orders or not? Mine is no back orders. Gotcha. I don't have to touch it every week. It's just there automatically. No back orders. There is no back orders, period. That doesn't happen. Yeah. So that's the kind of thing that they need to get with the program, I think. And they're just not good about telling us the truth about what's actually happening in the warehouse. They will go sometimes weeks between filling reorders, and then you'll get 2 or 3 weeks at once. I have heard from not DC and Image an amazing amount of problems from publishers dealing with Lunar. And I don't think that they're maybe they're fine for DC and Image. Maybe they are. I don't think they're a distributor though. You know, they're a freight forwarder. They're really good at what they do as DCBS, right? Mm-hmm. Which is, customers said they want X, give them X, and it comes in mint condition. Great, fantastic. But I want something different from my distributor. I want my distributor to understand what my needs as a retailer are. Does that make sense? Am I making sense at all?
I think you are, but I also think there's a certain amount of, and this is something I might push back on something you said earlier about the wins that you guys, I'll put myself in there because I was part of that conversation, gained that have fallen away. Yeah. You could argue that the things that have fallen away were not necessary to begin with, right?
Could you?
Because, I mean, the sales charts that I see show an increase in sales over the last, say 2 years. And that was during a period when Lunar was there. I'm seeing increases in sales by the publishers that they carry. So, and, I'm hearing at least anecdotally of stores that are seeing increases in single issue sales. Sure. So one could argue that those things that you fought so hard for might not have been important.
I don't know that I would draw a 1-to-1 between the 2 things that you said. I mean, certainly right now, this minute, we are seeing an increase in single issue sales by far.
Sure.
Because of Absolute Batman, because of the Ultimate Marvel Universe, because of Energon from Skybound. On the other hand, we are not seeing an increase of sales on an average issue of Captain Marvel, just to be a mean, to pick the name that I already picked. Yeah, right? Gotcha. Like, on generic ass comics, nobody's buying more of them. That's not a thing that's happening that I'm seeing. I'm seeing, in fact, quite the opposite. People are only buying event comics. People are not willing to pre-order or subscribe to things that are not really obvious hits. And even when people are subscribing and pre-ordering the obvious hits, they're doing it at the last possible second that they could. Often long after FOC has passed, and that the whole system is kind of breaking down as a result. Though that is probably a longer conversation about what the market is doing in terms of initial orders and marketing at FOC. I do think that marketing at FOC makes everything a giant mush and no time for people to consider stuff. And the overwhelming majority of periodical buyers, but more importantly, much more importantly, potential periodical buyers are not people who don't want to pay attention to it 52 weeks a year. Right? That's not a thing that people want to do. People don't want to go, oh, here's 9 covers. Which of the 9 covers do I want? Some people do. There's no doubt that some people do. But the overwhelming of people who would potentially buy periodical comics, yeah, I don't think so. I think, again, I looked to DC's New 52, which is now, 10 or 15 years old or whatever. But that was a marketing message that really hit and really worked, and people were jumping all in and they were doing the thing. Absolute's doing it to a certain extent right now. Ultimate's doing it to a certain extent. But it's people they want something they can digest. That's what they want.
It's a really interesting take, because I would say that my observation just from this side, from the publishing side, is that one of the challenges is how do you spend the energy and time and marketing budget, et cetera, as close as possible to the on sale date, because that's when people are going to make the decision. And so if you go back, say, pre FOC, and I'm going to talk about FOC next. So let's go back to the late 90s when the decisions were initial order and on sale. All of your marketing is around the initial order and none at the on sale. And so therefore you're never really focused on sell through. I would say that by focusing in on FOC or getting closer and closer to it, you get a chance to push sell through. That's what my point of view would be.
I don't think that it is because FOC, and only because FOC is not, there are not books in hand, right? There's no actual actionable thing that a customer can do to get the book.
They're pre-ordering. They're placing an order. They're placing a subscription.
Placing an order is not getting it though, right? And so that to me is where the disconnect is, because it is my strongest belief that 90, let's even go 85%. I actually think it's 98%, but let's call it 85% of the customers who walk in my store, the first time they've ever encountered any comic that's on that new comics rack is when they walk in my store and they see it on my new comics rack. And this is despite us doing an in-store newsletter, a physical thing that we put on the counter. We do a lot of physical marketing. And so I think that I understand that as on the publisher end, we're getting a better bang for our buck. We're getting a better, I said this, I can see the numbers went up by X, right? Like I can physically see the thing. But I don't think that's the people who, sorry, how to phrase this? I don't think that's all of the people. I'm not phrasing this right.
Yeah.
It's not all the people who might buy it. It's the people who did buy it, right? And I think that the might is more important than the did if you're trying to build something for the future.
Do you think any of that you're seeing is because your store doesn't really have a way for the customer to interact digitally? It's all physical? Like you don't really have an app or anything like that they can manage their subscriptions?
No. But I would be happy to be given evidence otherwise if that evidence didn't cost me $200 or more a month.
Well, you and I both know how I feel about that. I feel like you're being naive, but that's fine.
No. I mean, and dude, I understand. But we're still publishing a physical in-print magazine in our store, right? There's a physical onomatopoeia every fucking month, right? Yeah. Like, and we collect information this way and we do that, and and we hand out these, and we hand out the DC ones, even though they only send us 25 because they're fucking stupid. And the IDW one, and if there's a flaw in our system, I think that the biggest flaw in our system is that most of the staff are not periodical readers, and they don't actually truly understand the way to sell and promote that to the potential consumer, right?
Sure.
That's not, they're good at other things. They're super fucking good at other things, right? So I don't actually like, oh no, that's but
Yeah.
I've certainly watched over the last 10 years as, again, what I would say the general level of quality of comics as a baseline from the largest publishers has generally declined over the years, particularly from the expansion of IPs, again, going from 6 Spider-Man books to 12 or 18 or 20. The consumer is less and less and less interested in pre-ordering because they don't know what they're going to get anymore, right? And it's not, you can't just go, well, I'm a Batman fan, I'm going to get every Batman comic. I mean, there certainly are a couple guys who still do that, but when there's a new Batman book, we get half of the pre-orders that I would have expected in any kind of a rational world,
Again, you're focused on the total per SKU. I'm really curious to know how that correlates to the total per customer or the total per week. I'd be really interested in that as a metric, because that seems like me to like where something you could be missing. I have
not specifically calculated it,
sure,
but looking at our general trends and our general average sales, I do not believe that it has gone in the right direction relative to our increase or decrease of sales in general.
I get that.
I could go and dig into it, but it would take
well, who cares?
So much time, and it wouldn't actually change anything about the reality of how people operate, right?
Sure.
So
since neither of us has any more data on that, let's go.
Yeah, no, but I mean, it's good to talk about. It's good to talk about the limitations of your data, right? Because that's also a choice, right? Like I can't do some of these things that I want to because the data says this, and anyway.
Yeah,
I know what my limitations are.
Yeah, you've made choices about how you track that data. I do want to say, when I look back at your columns and the ones that I think were the most influential, I remember very succinctly, and I couldn't find it in the limited time I had to prepare for this, but I wanted to go back to the column you had in Comics Retailer. It might have been Comics and Games Retailer at the time, where you said, I didn't think I needed a POS system. Boy, was I wrong. This POS system has changed everything for me.
Sure.
I think based on the experiences I've had with other stores, that the difference you will have when you finally pull the trigger and get a software as a service POS system where someone else is doing a lot of that work for you, I feel like it'll be the same. But
yeah, okay,
we
great.
won't know until that happens.
I actually really, really, really wanted to have this guy. I actually wrote a whole bunch of notes for myself. It's like,
oh yeah,
here.
Yeah.
And all of these are about that kind of the premise of software as a service, because there's so much shit. All of the pain points for me are not the software things. It's not, the problem is not having 3 different streams of data, one from Diamond, one from Lunar, and one from PRH. It's things like that the point of sale doesn't understand, no point of sale understands that Hachette, for example, as a supplier, has 3 different terms of sales that operate in 3 completely different ways, whether you're buying Abrams, Chronicle, or Hachette books. It doesn't understand how when you get the data matters to what it is. It doesn't understand how Penguin Random House costs us so much money and so much time because they send us so many boxes that with so much packing material, that's where all the work is, right? The work is not figuring out how to do FOC for 3 different distributors, right? That's easy. Dude, I figured that out in week 1. And I've built myself a system, and it's super fucking efficient. And it's okay. I'd save myself a half an hour a week if I went for a software with service for that. But that doesn't actually solve any of the problems that you have. Do you
Sure.
understand
Well, I
what
mean,
I'm saying at all?
I do, but I think what you're showing is you don't understand how some of the ordering rules are implementable. But again,
Uh-huh.
that we don't need to litigate that. I mean, is definitely a choice. I do want to talk because we're already at 146. In 2002,
Come on,
you
we're
brought
going for 3 hours. We're going for 3 hours, man.
in 2002, you brought a class action lawsuit to Marvel
I did.
Comics over the changes in solicited books.
Yep.
The settlement gave comics retailers a couple weeks of a free inventory and birthed the final order cutoff. Right. That system that we currently have, some version from all the major distributors, that is one of the things that has been pervasive. 22 years on, what do you think of the legacy of this?
Well, so there's two ways to answer that. The first is the moral weight of it. Marvel was breaking their own terms of sales. A terms of sales was a unilateral terms of sales. It was not something that we ever had any say or input on. Their terms of sales said if a book is missolicited with X, Y, and Z as the definitions, then it's returnable. They didn't do that. They had to be taken into account for that. I thought when I initiated it, we were talking about 20, 25 comics maybe. Turned out it was like almost 200. It was a lot of fucking money. We won $1 million for the class. $1 million. And I didn't get any more than anybody else. Every single retailer in the world got at least a free week's worth of comics, which, our peers, is a lot of fucking money for them.
True.
You know?
Oh, it was a lot of money for me.
It
really
made a big goddamn difference to a lot of stores. I have not paid for a drink in the 22 years since.
That is the legacy.
I ordered the drink by myself, but if I sat down at a table with my peers, I have not paid for a drink in those 22 years.
Sure.
So from that point of view, the legacy is fantastic. I think that the notion of the motivation of why Marvel did FOC, and I feel like I had enough contact with Jemis that I can say that his initial thing to me. So when I sat down in a meeting with him,
yeah,
in New York City, in his face, and let's talk about this, and his basic response is, "What the fuck are you gonna do? Sue me?" And so I went, yeah, I will, dude. If that's the way you want to play this game, And so, I think that from Jemis's point of view, FOC was a fuck you. FOC was, well, here's a way we can get around it. This is the way that we can do the thing that we say that we're doing, and we can still fuck you in any way that we want to, And I think that it was the next line of publishers, particularly DC, who went, well, it looks to us that if we have people place their order at the last possible second, that they're ordering more copies. That's what it looks like. Sure. Then we're going to do that too. And then everybody was doing it because DC did it, and DC was run by Paul and Bob at the time, and Paul and Bob knew what the fuck they were doing. So from that point of view, maybe it's good. I think that in my heart of hearts, I think that a meaningful percentage of FOC orders are generated from panic buying rather than consideration of how the process works and what you need to order. There was just a thread on one of the private Facebook groups from a retailer who I would say is a very smart, intelligent retailer, who was asking, what can we do to get publishers to make sure that we have the cover art of the comic they want us to order at FOC? Because this is actually a major problem. Probably somewhere between 5 and 10% of the comics at FOC do not have cover art available to us. Yeah. Which is fucking insane. And my response was, well, don't fucking order them then. If every single one of you went, I'm going to order this many copies, then every publisher would stop doing that the next second. Am I wrong about that?
You are not wrong about that. You and I absolutely agree on that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so most of the things that I complain about publishers doing are in reality, complaining about how my peers behave, right?
Sure.
Because if they didn't do those things, then the publishers wouldn't do the stupid fucking things that they do that, in my mind, cost us sales over the long run.
True, but they're responding to the market as it is, as opposed to the market that you feel like it should be.
No, I see. But here's the
all right. So this actually does lead me to something.
I want to push back on this one lightly, because I genuinely and truly think that the overwhelming majority of my peers, who are not the people who sell the most number of comics, but who are the most number of venues for those comics, are barely making it. They're selling very, very, very few shelf copies because of the way they have to operate. And they're desperate for information, and they're not getting in the way that we need because of the bifurcation of the trifurcation of the market. There was literally, again, another thread on a private Facebook group about, and there were a number of retailers who did not understand that Rockefellers was a Ghost Machine book, right? And I think that's been clear from the day one marketing. There's been 1,000 emails about it, and they did not make that cognitive leap whatsoever. And they're like, well, I way underordered this comic as a result. So yeah, I don't think that the average mom and pop retailer has the capacity to actually keep up with the final order cutoff system and the way that things are structured, despite, as you say quite correctly, that is how the market is going.
Sure.
That does not mean the market is going in the correct direction, I think, is the thing that I would push back at. You know, I don't think that that's the way most customers want to buy. I'm sure that if we went to some sort of online-based ordering system, we could get orders to increase for the people who want to use that by 10 or 20%. But I also am positive that we would lose another 5 or 20 or 30% of customers who don't want to order in that fashion, right? And so do the numbers balance out and make it better so that the super fan, to use the DC phrase from a couple of years ago, is the way that you're going? I don't want that. I want something to be more open and more accessible to more people. I don't know. And I don't know that a closed ordering environment is and making them presenting an order that's based upon which variant cover do you want is going to benefit that calculation at all, if that makes any sense at all.
Sure, it does. I mean, I understand the where you're coming from. I think that I have a question pretty deep in here that I wanted to get to, and I feel like it's a good place to skip to it.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it is, for me, where you and I have tension.
Yeah.
Really, really pivots on this crux. So do you ever feel as though that, I mean, for 30 years you've been writing this column, right? That you've been at this, you've been advocating, you've been doing those things. Do you ever feel as though that energy you spent for change in publisher and distributor business practice, you ever feel like it could have been better spent learning and sharing better business practices for the comics retailers themselves?
No.
Like, instead of saying, Diamond, you need to fix this, or publisher X, you need to fix Y, if instead you had said, here is the landscape you live in. Here's how you survive this landscape.
I would put to you that I would say that a meaningful percentage, I mean, I would have to go back and look at what percentage it actually is, but a meaningful percentage are things that are aimed at retailers and aimed at changing retailer behavior. The very first column was ethics in the comics industry, and it was not It was as much about the retailers and how the retailers act. I don't know that there's a harsher critic of my fellow retailers than me. Right? Like, to the point where people tell me, dude, tone it down, man. don't beat up on your fellows as much.
Yeah.
And I constantly go, you're hella fucking right, and I need to modulate the thing that I'm saying here. I would disagree with that characterization without going and analyzing it.
Sure.
But in terms of what's living in my head, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's at least as much about, again, they're going to keep doing it as long as you let them do it. If you tell them this is how you want them to behave, then that's of course what they're going to want to do. And not just that, but they've told us to our faces for decades. David Gabriel has literally said over and over and over and over again, I'm doing this because your orders tell me to.
Right. 100%. Yes.
And all I can do is go, my orders don't. My orders are not saying that. Hello.
What he's saying there is that your order is insignificant to how he behaves.
Right. Well, but that's because, and I think this is a truism, that the only thing that actually matters is kind of the top 20, top 30 accounts, because there's such an overwhelming percentage of what the actual orders end up being that an individual single store who's not part of a chain or who's not, I'll get myself in trouble for this one, but not willing to keep fostering the scam is we're not relevant to their numbers anymore.
Well, I think it's more
certainly the store that orders 3 copies of Batman is less relevant than me that sells 20 copies of Batman, right? And because I said it myself, but I'm way much less relevant than the guy that sells triple digits of Batman.
Right, because the guy who can sell triple digits of Batman, I can get him to go up 10%, and I'm going to double your order.
Sure.
Right? That's where this is. It's not so much that it's irrelevant, that it's that if I can make an adjustment that increases his order, it's going to well outstand anything that you do. And so long as I'm covering the base of the stores that are your size, it's a win all day.
But my argument has always been, if you do X, Y, Z, then you will not increase my orders by 10%. You will double or triple my orders. Whereas the guy who's selling triple digits, you're never going to get them to go over 10%. And the only reason you're getting them to go over 10% is because they're making a financial calculation and not an aesthetic one. Overall, as a super, fair. I was being super broad there, too broad. I know.
That's fair. I know, but you love broad. You love broad.
No, I mean, kind of have to. I do love broads.
Hey!
Oh.
Let's go back. I want to go back because we did digress something. There was something I wanted to hit on.
Yeah.
So you fought for the class action lawsuit.
Yeah.
You ended up basically fighting for FOC, whether you meant to or not.
Yep. Lost 3 years of my life to it too, by the way.
Yeah, I have no doubt.
Yeah.
What should the 30-something Brian Hibbs, right?
Yeah.
What would he be fighting for today?
I would like to believe that my 30-something self would be fighting for exactly the same things that I am. I mean, but they won't, of course, because every a 30-year-old has a different perspective than a 50-year-old,
Yeah.
So yeah, I listen to my 30-year-old staff for what they're fighting for, right? They're fighting for equity of access. They're fighting for maybe we don't need 2 shelves of Neil Gaiman books. Maybe we only need one shelf, because that's what sales support, Brian. Right?
We get that he slept on your couch, but
yeah, no, I know. But I go to that you know what? You're right, and so I would like to believe. If they were standing here, they'd probably laugh at me. But I would like to believe that I really do listen to them and I really do pay attention to the things that they say. And when I disagree, I try to give them a reason-based, here's the reason why I think that is not the way things are going to work. but sure, let's try it. Maybe in, probably 75% of the cases, it's sure, let's try it. Let's try it your way. And we're probably 50-50 for, yeah, my way was better. But the other 50 is, your way was
still
better.
50-50.
Sure.
That's good. I will say, looking back on when I saw your Eisner video this year, I loved how much you were, and you have been doing it in this conversation, and you do it on your social outlets. You focus in so much on your staff and so much on listening to them. I want to say that has been, I love that. That has been I won't say it's a surprise. It's just the thing that I love about this, Brian, is that you're so focused in on them. And I know that as somebody who works with a lot of people who are younger than me, have a team full of people that I bring in that are hopefully as passionate as you and I are, but have a different perspective. I know how difficult that can be because people, they want my face and my voice, but I'm like, hey, how about these faces and voices?
Yeah.
So yeah, anyway, I want to.
Yeah, Zoe, Kat, and Katie are the best, and also Chrissy and Max, who are our kind of our interns. But they're the greatest team I could possibly fucking have.
That's awesome.
It is not actually possible that I could be who I am now. And I couldn't do, for example, the graphic novel club, right? Like it wouldn't be possible for me to put all this time and energy into that if it wasn't for them, not just running the store, but also helping me curate the books, right? Because they all get a say in the books that we pick. It's not just here's what the old man thinks, right? Because it would be a very, very different selection of comics if it was only what I personally individually liked. But they're going, oh no, we really think that this is a book that, Thieves might be a really good example. It was Nobrow, I think. And it was like a young lesbian romance. And I would never have picked that book, but when they went, no, this is the book, right? This is the book. And I read it and I actually paid attention to it rather than, the skim. And I went, oh yeah, you're right. And I had a really fucking good conversation with that creator. And I learned something about comics and who they are and who they're for and how they can be and what they should be. And it has done nothing but expand my view of what a comic book store can and should be, and what our graphic novel club can and should be. And I hope are we going to spend some time on
that was,
I'm
going to skip a little bit ahead because that's the way the nature of these conversations. I want to talk about that. I actually have quite a bit on this one.
Sure.
So let's talk about the mechanics of this. So you've talked a bit about how the choices are made. As I understand it, you're collecting a monthly subscription fee, and in return, you're sending those customers a curated list of the graphic novels that you and the team come to.
We're sending them as an individual book.
As an individual book in a priority box, right? Is that how that works?
We were using priority mail, but we ended up switching to UPS because priority mail went up by like 50% this year. And so oddly, this is weird. It is cheaper to send a book to UPS and have UPS deliver it to the post office's point and then have them do the final mile. Like how could that, the guy who's running the United States Postal Service has done something really, really wrong, I think, if that's the way they're doing it. But
all right, so they get it.
So it's a single individual book. We come up with a list as a staff of here's the books that we like. Sometimes it's just me and Zoe like going, because a lot of times, honestly, we're like 2 days before our deadline if we want people to print the book plate, and so we've just got to make a decision. But anytime that we can, we invite all the staff members to read all of the choices, and we literally vote on it, and we vote Eisner style, so everybody kind of gives it points, and whatever gets the most points wins, kind of regardless of what I think. I put my thumb on the scale a couple of times of I really want to talk to this guy at this time, and I'm not ever going to have a chance to do this again for 10 years. There are certain authors that are like that. They only put out a book once a year, or once a decade. But overall, it is the voice of the staff, and it's an individual book. It's not, we're not giving them a list. If the customer goes, I don't like that choice, then they can pick anything else in our store, that's the same price or less, and go, just send me that instead, and then we do that.
Gotcha. Okay. Are you primarily sourcing these through your standard distribution? Are you going directly to printers? How is this working?
I'm almost always getting them through the books distributor,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I have not bought a book from Diamond for this in at least 9 years. Right, because because Diamond doesn't distribute well. Actually, not 9 years, but whenever Image left would be the last time that I bought a book from Diamond.
But so the book plates and all of that, though, that's interactive directly with the printer, I would assume. I mean, the publisher.
Well, no, I go to the publisher. Yeah, I go to the publisher, and because in the book world, the publisher in most cases is the distributor, right? Penguin Random House, Hachette, Scholastic, Simon and Schuster. The publisher is the distributor. The ones who are acting as the middleman, if I get a Drawn and Quarterly book, I'm buying the book from Simon, but I'm going to D&Q about the book plate, about doing the how do I arrange the interview, et cetera, et cetera.
Gotcha. So you're not negotiating the actual terms of the sale with the printer. You're just ordering under your normal terms of sale.
So I am generally going, I expect at least 53%, and pretty much everybody goes, we can do that for you, because I'm buying that quantity and I'm buying non-returnable. There's no fooling. There's not a oh, the book didn't sell, I'm sending back a third of them. That's not how it works. Everything that I buy it and I keep it, and that's the way that it works. I'm getting the best promotional discount that they offer to anybody who would meet similar terms.
Are you paying for the book plates?
No.
So they pay for the book plates, the printing and the signing.
The publisher does, but it's honestly, at a publisher level, it's $100, $200, I don't know, $300. It's not. They're not paying $1 a book plate. Because they've got contracts.
No, it's not the printing. It's the sunk cost, right? Not the sunk cost. It's the proposition cost of that. Is the amount of time that they're putting into it, and they're
selling enough copies, right? So every single graphic novel club book that we buy is kind of a minimum of 200 books. If it's a kid's graphic novel, it's like 350, because we're in the San Francisco Unified School District as well.
Okay.
And so 200 or 350 of a book is a meaningful number for a lot of publishers.
Sure.
Not all publishers. That's not necessarily a huge thing for many people. But there are definitely books where we've been kind of 8 to 10% of the print run.
Sure.
In fact, there have been books that have gone out of print prematurely because we told them after they'd printed it.
Yeah.
And I actually feel really bad about those cases.
Well,
I'm laughing, but I genuinely feel bad about those cases.
So when your staff, when you guys vote, you get to this, you get to a book, and that printer or that publisher doesn't want to do a book plate or doesn't want to do 53%. Do you just go back to number 2?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you just get back to
we at this point, we unless something changes, we will probably never work with DC Comics ever again, because the last time we went to them for I want to say it was Flash Volume 1. Because we almost never pick superhero books too, so I actually thought it was a big deal that we were picking a superhero book. And they're like, "Yeah, we'll do a book plate for you for $400." Mm-hmm. And I'm like, "Yeah, no, go fuck yourself. What do you mean for $400?" Literally every other publisher is, "Yes, we will take care of that for you, no problem." Like, without even thinking twice. And so the notion that you would charge me for something like that when I'm selling your book and putting a pretty big effort to it in terms of our resources, at least, that's kind of infuriating to me. But literally,
any of that came from that particular interaction. You've been an incredibly harsh critic of them. You have called them names. You have really been, sure. I would say, consider what my mama would say. You've been real ugly to DC.
Sure. Well,
Do you think that had anything to do with them
D-
saying, "Yeah, that's
sure.
fine, we'll do it for $400"?
Sure. DC. I mean, yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't care though. At that point, if they don't want to be part of what we're doing, then cool.
I got
Cool.
you.
You know,
All right, cool.
it's not like I literally I don't have 6 other choices every month. Well, there are that's not true because like in January and February, you usually have like one book is the only book that you can do because nobody publishes books in January, February.
Yeah.
But overall, no, I have every choice in the world. I have so many options. And I don't need them. They need me more than I need them, I think.
Obviously not.
But see,
obviously not. But that's fair.
If it's the thing that you're saying, if it's a hey, fuck you, we're gonna show you.
No, I think they're saying
I
like this
care.
is the cost of admission because we know that we don't want to work with you because you've been so ugly to us.
Sure.
And you've chosen to continue to be ugly.
That will never change, and it will only get worse. Right?
Well, I don't think they care, but that's
well, right. No, but if they don't care, then that's what the situation is. And I don't think that they don't care. I mean, I literally don't because we have plenty of fucking completely cordial conversations face to face. You know, like I mean, I have great conversations with those people. Right, cool. But for that kind of thing, you know, they're like, well, this is what we charge other people to do book plates, and so we're going to charge you. Like, well, cool. Then I won't participate. Yeah, you've lost the opportunity, whatever that opportunity is, you know. And if they think that that's not worth the opportunity, that's cool. Ain't no thing to me, you know.
Okay, so all right. Listen, this is one of those stories people tell, and then this in the version of the story I've heard now from 3 sources. Yeah. You didn't act as though it was ain't no thing to me. You acted as though it was a big thing. You lost your cool in a public place. That was what I heard.
Lost my cool in a public place.
That's what I had heard. Yeah, I wasn't there, so I
would love to hear that story. Please tell me that story because I don't lose my cool in public places.
Okay.
No, I mean I don't lose my cool. I will forcefully argue for the thing that I believe in.
Call people the worst names you can think of with your loud voice.
Dude.
If I acted the way I've seen you act, that would be me losing my cool. Let's put it that way.
That is not me losing my cool.
Okay.
Seriously, if I lose my cool, people know that I lost my cool, and I've
heard more than once that you lost your cool, but that's all right, man. It's a rumor mill. It's a bullshit. You know, it's how we get along is telling stories about each other. Let's get back to how the mechanics of this work.
I mean, you know, the only thing I'll say, and you know, maybe I should have said this at the top, or maybe I shouldn't. Maybe this doesn't matter. You know, I have outlasted 4 regimes at DC and 5 at Marvel, and I existed before there was an Image Comics. I don't really worry about what the person working there today necessarily thinks, because if they don't understand what my motivation is, and my motivation is to make things better and to promote good comics and to make comics better, then I don't have time for anything. Like, this is why I don't really get losing your cool, right? Because I don't emotionalize like that, right? Like, all I care about is are comics better. Seriously, dude, it's the campfire rule. Everything in my life is, did I leave it better than I found it?
All right. Okay. Like I said, I've been in public spaces with you where if I behaved the way you were behaving, it would be me losing my cool. And so that's how I'd come to this. I can only come at this from my point of view.
Definitely not me losing my cool.
All right, that's cool. Let's talk back about the Graphic Novel Club again. So your shipping costs are different. You're publicizing the priority box. So all of my math is based on that. But the math I'm looking at has you giving somewhere between a 15% and a 30% discount on the books that you're shipping. And that means that they're giving that discount and you're sending a book plate. Now, this is the UPS thing is new information for me.
Right.
how do you square that with, I mean, back in the 90s, you actually did a very, influential
Yep, sure.
column where you talked about the evils of discounting.
Yep,
It has been reprinted in a book that you and I both
yep,
have entries in. Like
yep,
you've been very much against this idea of discounting.
yep.
How do you square the fact that you're essentially become an online discounter?
Well, I mean, I don't think that I have, because the overwhelming majority of for the adult club, the overwhelming majority of people buy it month to month, and so they're paying $25 a book. Um,
Okay.
and rather than paying the annual, which is $240 a year, where they're paying $20 a book, so that would be a 20% discount. You're right there, but the overwhelming majority of members are buying it monthly. Also, I have set a $25 benchmark for the book that over the course of the year we tend to average out around, but individual books don't operate like that at all.
Over the course of the last year, let me pull this
Yeah,
up here. I want to make sure that I've got it because I
I
only
haven't
going from
analyzed
Instagram.
it in at least 2 years because it was working well. But go ahead.
Let's see. I've got that number here. We're looking at an average of $20.79 over the last 12 months.
Yeah, great. And so if the average book has been 2079, most people are paying $25 a month.
Right. That's a 20% discount.
No.
No.
If the average book is $21, as you just said, and
Yeah.
I'm charging them $25, it is not
So
a
they're,
discount, it is a premium.
well, all right. But shipping is
And
actually
shipping,
involved.
as I said, we switched to,
You're charging them $8.50 per shipping.
yes,
So
we certainly
$25.
are.
Yeah.
And it is currently running approximately $8.27 for us to ship out an average package. I would have to look if that's still accurate today, because they're going UPS, as I said. And so books that go here in the Bay Area or in California or the Western states cost me like $6 to ship to a person.
Uh-huh.
A book that goes to Florida or whatever costs me $9, almost $10. But on average, it comes out to 8 something. And we're not. It's not much of a haircut, particularly when you average it against the average cost of the average book and what most people are paying. So I don't believe that we're in a discount. We're not in a discount model, certainly. We're not. We're not. And in fact, I would especially say that value is not the proposition that we're pushing and promoting. And I don't think that any member is going, I'm getting books at a discount. Nobody's thinking that, right? Like, because that's not how we promote it.
Okay.
I don't think so, at least.
I understand, but once again, we're having Brian mind reading, but I appreciate that.
But I mean, what else can I do, right? Like,
You can
I
look at
can
how
go
they
how I
behave.
would operate and go, here's
Yeah.
what I believe that the math is. As I said, I stopped actually checking a rolling average a couple of years ago because it was always the same every year, and we were below the number, and the math worked out in our favor. Look, fundamentally, the Graphic Novel Club is a fundraiser for the store. It is our Patreon. That is what the Graphic Novel Club is. And so if the Graphic Novel Club is not making money for us, then we go out of business, full stop. Without the Graphic Novel Club, we would have gone out of business, full stop, 10 years ago.
Sure.
There is zero chance that I would still be. Well, no, there's not zero chance, because I guess I could have fired every single person who worked for me and gone back to working 6 days a week. I could have made that choice, but fuck that choice. I do not want that. Oh my God. And nobody would want. You think I'm a bitchy bitch right now? Can you imagine if I worked at the store 6 days a week? Can you fucking imagine?
Oh man, no.
No, but anyway, I think without me actually rechecking it on a regular basis, I believe that the math is completely in our favor in that, and that we are a premium service and not a sales service.
Okay. All right. I think that there's I hear it, and you do have data that is not posted. You are, it is
Why would I post
interesting.
that data? Uh-huh.
Um, as posted, I would say that there's been. I only brought this up because a number of people asked me about it. There's basically said, "Well, Brian is an online discounter now because as posted, you are."
No.
Yeah, you are. The
No, I'm
data
not.
is very clear that you're going to be sending it out in a priority box. The priority box is a certain amount, and and it is clear what the cover price is of the things
So
you're
I
sending.
need to go to the website and I need to change 3 words, and then everyone will shut the fuck up. That's not a
Or
thing.
stop criticizing those who are online discounters. I think those are two choices. Yeah, you could make.
What does one have to do with the other? As I said,
If you are one, you can't say that
okay.
that is
But
the evil
I
thing that is
literally
driving
just
us
showed
down.
you and said to you that that is not true. It is fundamentally not true.
You have said that, yes, just not in where it is advertised.
That's
That's
not.
all. That's all I'm saying. Is
Okay.
that it is understandable that you.
The second thing is that it is a different business model to go. I am specifically selling you a book under the priced retail price specifically. That is a different business model than maybe the math works out in your favor. So yeah, I guess any member who's in Florida, when I send a $24.95 book that month, and that guy is signed up for an entire year, sure, that guy's getting a discount. But he's getting a discount because he's supporting us for a year. You understand? He can't drop out at that point. He's spent the money. That is worth it to me as a Patreon deal.
I'm not saying it's a wrong deal. I don't think it's wrong. I think criticizing anybody who has people who have a successful business model is wrong.
You're conflating two different things.
I believe they're connected, and so do many others who asked me to ask you this question.
Sure. Okay. Why are these people talking to my face, man?
Because it's often difficult to talk to your face.
Dude, I'm the easiest person in the world to talk to.
I love that you believe that about yourself.
I do believe that about myself.
I want to talk a bit. I mean, now that we're in this place, I want to talk about stores that have tried to emulate you in different markets. You have a very specific style of store, and there have been, I can think of at least 2, and one of which went out of business in the last, very famously, loudly went out of business in the last year, who have tried really hard to run what I think they would think you think, right, is a good comic shop.
Sure.
And it's not designed. I mean, you and I have had this argument for decades now, where you say publishers should do this for retailers because retailers need the XYZ. And I say, you need XYZ. Sure. Retailers generally don't. And you say, that's wrong. Anything's good for me is good for them. And then we have this and it feels, and then at the end of the day, what it comes down to is you really want Marvel or DC to do this thing. And I can try, but it's not going to be successful because I'm not working for Marvel or DC. As a publisher, this is a common problem, and you and I have had this conversation more than once. But I want to talk more about the stores that not fall for this, but try and emulate you in a different market. The kind of store you have works for 35 years in the middle of San Francisco.
Yeah,
it may not work anywhere else.
Sure.
Say, for instance, Hudson, New York.
Sure.
How do you feel about the people making those choices when they are essentially listening to you say, this is how comics should be?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that I don't think that I feel any responsibility that they weren't able to make it work, because 95% of all small businesses go out of business in the first 5 years, full stop. Right. Like whatever you are, whatever you do. And comics are a harder business than ever. And I think most importantly, if I had tried to open my store for the very first time in the last 5 years, I'm sure that I would never have made it. I'm sure that I never would have made it. Ever, ever, ever. I started my store for $10,000 in my comic book collection.
Oof. Yeah.
That was it. $10,000 in my comic book collection. And 35 years later, here I am, right? Because I've changed and I've bent with the wind, right? But I didn't open my store going, I'm going to be a graphic novel store. And particularly because you couldn't in 1989. There were 10 graphic novels in 1989.
There was two, and I think I've got them right here. It was Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns, right? Yeah, that was it. And Mouse.
There was Mouse, and there was ElfQuest, and there was there was a couple, three other things that are now out of print.
Cerebus, right? Yeah.
Cerebus, the swords maybe had been out at that point, but not the big omnibus thing yet.
Cool.
Yeah, there was like a Thieves Guild graphic novel that was in print. There was a couple of things, but not things that were gonna go back to press forever, right? Which is the only way that this business model works. But also, the thing that I said to you is the only way this business model works is if you're also serializing and amortizing. And I don't know the specifics of the businesses that you're talking about. I know the businesses you are talking about, but I don't know the specifics of how they run. I don't know how much runway do they have financially. I don't know what was their mix of new product versus old product, not old product, but perennial product. Those are kind of quintessentially important questions,
Sure.
I think that when I look at my peers here in San Francisco, the only other store, I don't want to say the only other store, but the store that I would have been shopping at here in San Francisco if I didn't own my own store, he's struggling. He's not having a great and easy time of it because it's not a great and easy time to run a comic book store. And I think, and I fundamentally think that one of the main reasons that we've been open for 35 years is because we've been open for 35 years.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
totally.
we're the go-to store, or we corner a particular thing. And I think that it's and I think that what we do is impossible. And I do. And if I didn't buy a house 25 years ago and set my mortgage at a particular level, there is no fucking way that I could make this work any longer.
Yeah.
Right? I set my nut so long ago. It's the distant fucking past. And as I've said multiple times here, at being an individual mom and pop store in this climate, in this world, is really, really, really hard. It is harder and harder and harder with the way that the largest publishers and 3 distributors are treating us. And I was thinking the other day, like, if I had to train everybody to like do without me, like what is this going to take? Like I'm sort of set on, I'm going to make videos of what I do, here's all the steps that I go through. But when I start thinking about it, I'm like, this is so stupid, all these steps that I go through. And again, even with the software as a service, I would still have to go through almost all of these steps. I've been thinking about this really consciously.
I have no doubt that you've thought about it, but I would say that, I want to go back to, there was a difference between Brian, who thought he didn't need a POS system, and Brian, who had one.
But the Brian who did do one went and did the analysis and figured it out and spent time looking at other systems and figuring it out. And this Brian has also spent a whole lot of time looking at other systems and kicking the tires and trying to work it out and asking a lot of questions. And I have not yet gotten the questions answered that anything is better than Moby. Sorry. It just, the data that it gives me, the things that I can pull out of it, I've asked every other system, if I wanted to know this and that, how would I do that? Yeah, maybe you'd figure it out in some sort of weird way like this, It's not, they're not tools that are just there that I can just grab and go, boom, ham, here it goes, Now, is that important necessarily? Well, it is for me, because I've been doing this for 35 years, right?
It also might be the difference between distributor relations and publisher and retailer relations now versus pre-split. The things that are actually valuable are there.
Sure, except that people don't put covers up. right?
Yeah,
The most fundamental piece of data.
you and I both know how to fix that.
Don't put covers up. Publishers, there is one publisher who sends us weeks worth of data that doesn't have descriptions or creative teams or literally absolutely anything in any way, shape, or form that would make that usable or functionable data.
And you and I both know how to fix that.
It's okay. You know?
Yeah, they think it's okay
And
because the data says.
And you know why? Because I literally had a meeting with this in New York about this because the biggest store said, no, do it this way. It's much better for us. So fuck all y'all. Come on.
All right. I feel like we're both running out of gas, but I do want to cover some things.
No, I'm just starting. I mean, I got to open the store in 30 minutes, but yeah.
If you were starting off today, what would that look like? What would you be doing? Would you counsel? Because again, the more that we spend talking, the more time we spend talking, the more I feel like I like the Brian who says 30% of my sales are this. We need this to be important, right? I like that Brian because I don't hear that Brian until I have this conversation with you.
I literally think that this is all that Brian says all the time, but cool.
All right. I like the Brian who says, here are the things you have to deal with. If you did these things, that it would be good for your business. I love that Brian. The Brian who says, you guys need to fix this for me. That's the Brian that I run into challenges with.
Okay, I don't think that's okay. Anyway, let me answer the actual question that you asked. There is what would you need today to open a store?
Sure.
And I am positive if I was 21 again, and today I would never be able to open a store ever. Period. Full stop. Because again, I opened it with $10,000 in my comic book collection. You would need minimum, in my opinion, $150,000 minimum to even consider opening a comic shop in San Francisco, to even think about it.
Sure.
You would need $150,000. Racks, build out, inventory. It would take you a long time to recoup that investment. So I don't think it is possible for me to open this store today now.
Sure. What would the store look like? Because your store's morphed, right? What would the store that would open today? What would that? I think
it would close pretty fast, is what I'm saying. Because even with that $150,000, I don't think that there's enough space in town. If you're not, so the only store that has opened, kind of in the last 10 years that is, I think, externally viable. And, my friends here in town, if you listen to this, I'm not saying that you're not viable. I'm just saying is Silver Sprocket, because Silver Sprocket is a publisher who is only paying publisher prices to stock their shop, right?
Okay.
Which is considerably less than wholesale prices that a retailer pays. And I think that is the kind of model that works. I'm also not the kind of person who wants to be a publisher. I don't want to be a publisher. I have no interest in being a publisher. I would be a terrible publisher. I would be the worst publisher in the world. Because I don't even know if you know, I am so risk adverse. That's how I've stayed open for 35 years.
I believe it.
Because I don't believe in taking any goddamn risk at all. That's why I'm a bookstore, right? You didn't ask me the what's the difference between a bookstore and a comic book store question,
I thought we started there, but that's fine. Yeah. What is the difference between a bookstore and a comic book store?
Because for a bookstore, there's essentially no risk in the books, depending on how you do it. Like if I had started today, I'd probably open with a returnable account, and so then there's literally no risk in bringing in books.
Oh boy. Okay. Let's look at that. I mean, you want to talk about? Let's talk about store count. the number of 20 years ago, the difference between the number of bookstores that are open and today is, I'm doing this off the top of my head, but I have actually this data, is something like 30%. There are 30% of the stores that were open 20 years ago are open today.
Okay.
The difference between comic shops
How about
open
hold on,
20 years ago. Let me finish. There's comic shops open then and open today is less than is a single digit number. It's a single digit number.
Okay, that may well be. I would ask you to actually rerun that math with post Barnes and Noble or not Barnes and Noble.
Well,
right?
Barnes and Noble
Borders would, sorry, not Barnes and Noble, but Borders.
I would argue that it was because of the non-returnability. It was because of the returnability. It was because of the stabilization of the data. It was because of those things that Borders and Barnes and Noble could open, and because of that Amazon could then eat their lunch. And as a result, the independent bookstore is no longer a viable option. So what I'm saying is that
in San Francisco, that is physically not true. We have literally 0 chain stores, and we haven't for a decade, and we have nothing but independent bookstores. And we have how many
independent bookstores though between 20 years ago and now?
I don't actually know the number. I'm sure it's down, but I don't think it's down more than certainly not down more than comic book stores in San Francisco. And I don't think it's down necessarily to clothing stores or jewelry stores or any kind of retail store in San Francisco, right? Yeah. Because that's a particular facet of our market, you know? So yeah, I'm not sure the way you're looking at the metric is the same way that I would express that metric. So I wouldn't necessarily change the way that I operate. I wouldn't go ordering 20 and 30 and 40 copies of books and tanking my cash flow, right? I'd still be ordering onesies and twosies and threesies because that's how books actually sell. Almost every fucking book sells in onesies and twosies and threesies, and that's it.
Sure.
You get the occasional thing where you got to find what your ceiling is. It takes a while to find the ceiling. So that would make the math of it probably more palatable than the direct market function of you own it, you buy it, you own it. That's why I think that most of the newer stores, when I see them, most of them are ordering, again, 3s and 5s and 10s on their periodicals. And so they can't ever grow. You can't grow from that.
Yeah.
There's not enough. You don't have anywhere to grow from. Your number's so small.
I think you have to pick your, like in the same way that you guys pick your graphic novels, you have to pick your shots and you have to really lean all the way into them. And that is how you're going to grow. It's how we are going to grow as an industry is people actually picking their shots and risking.
Sure. You don't have the data in so many cases of what the book actually is. Some publishers are getting better and better and better about offering PDFs.
Yeah.
But I would strongly argue it's the strong minority of books have any kind of thing that's available to you to see what it is.
And once again, if the stores were really getting behind and risking on the ones that they knew, and they figured out build plans to sell and did actually risk behind it, I guarantee you that number would go up. I guarantee you.
But if you're a store that's barely making any money and you're spending all of your time wasting your time doing 3 different systems to place your order for periodical comics rather than going through a single system that was streamlined and easy and made sense, and you're wasting that energy that way, even if you have a software as a service kind of a deal, you're still spending more time than you used to spend. You are.
Yeah, more. Absolutely. But I mean, that's just
burning your hours, and the hours are the thing that the small business does not have.
There's no way. That box is open, baby. Pandora opened that box. That's what it is, right?
Pam Lifford opened that box, but okay.
You're right. Thank you. What do you think is the biggest risk?
Fuck Pam Lifford, by the way.
Man. It's shocking to me that they wouldn't give you anything. Like they wouldn't give you any special treatment. It's shocking to me. What is the biggest?
Here's the thing. If I were to talk to almost anybody who worked at or works at DC, I believe that they would agree with me with that assessment. That's what I believe.
I believe that they would
because they say to my face that they agree with it.
I
Well,
believe that they would be a lot more political because they value certain relationships.
sure,
I
sure.
believe that there's a certain, a certain investment in long-term relationships where you be careful with what you say. That's
I've I've been I've been selling DC Comics for 35 fucking years.
yeah.
I have been overselling relative to the market most of those 35 years. The overwhelming majority of those 35 years, I have been overselling to the market substantially. If they participated in Graphic Novel Club with me, I would still be overselling to the market. I can assure you of that fact because I know what the numbers are on those kinds of things. So, yeah, no, I disagree, man. I disagree.
Okay, that's fair. I
Yeah,
don't have their hard numbers, but I would say the numbers I have seen
I'm saying
lead me to believe that you are
the
probably
numbers
performing
of
at
books that I
about
would
the
be.
size of stores in your
Yeah,
discount group. As far as
yeah,
this overall size of your volume,
yeah,
I think you're probably tracking maybe slightly above average, but I would not.
yeah.
I would say you're probably closer to the median.
Again, because I'm not buying Graphic Novel Club books from them anymore,
Yeah, but this is
right?
pre-graphic novel club, man. I mean, this is your numbers are what your numbers are,
Pre
dude.
Graphic Novel Club. So you're talking 10-year ago numbers. You have 10
All
year ago
right. Well,
numbers, my friend.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Anyway,
I mean, many of us do.
anyway,
Yes, there have been leaks. We know what
sure,
volume people are
sure,
making. We
sure.
know what discount group you
Yes,
were in
yes,
during that period. Any publisher
yes.
who understands how to look at that data knows exactly how much volume you
Yeah,
were doing overall. So yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Okay.
What do you think is the biggest risk facing the direct market right now today?
Surviving. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't think that the market is particularly favorable to new stores opening up, um, unless there's a particular way that you do business that not everybody's suitable for doing that kind of a business. I think this goes back to the question that you were kind of asking without actually directly asking it about the stores that had closed following my business model, scare quotes. Um, but yeah, I don't think that you can make a periodical based business work right now unless you are really actively pushing and upselling the collectible aspects of it. But I mean, frankly, I think that while some of that in fact, that collectability is probably far more real than it was during the Valiant and Image days with Wizard, because the print runs are so goddamn low that there may actually be some actual real collectability on those things. I don't think that anyone's actually gonna be able to pay off for them until either you hit it in the first week, or you wait 20 years for the nostalgia. And I don't think that that's a particularly valuable way to do business today. I don't think I think it's viable for the 20 people or the 30 people who are viable doing it. And I don't think that there's room for another 3,000 stores to do that same business model, because I don't think that that's how people want to buy comics at the end of the day. Speaking
Yeah,
as a store who ran a collectible periodical focus
sure.
store as best that I possibly could, and it was not any more viable than this. It was less viable than this.
Yeah, I would say that you're probably, I think probably right, especially in your market, right? You have specialized and you have become the place that specializes. I would say
Sure.
that the success stories that I see are the ones that don't specialize. They are going in 8 directions at once and
Sure.
and are gathering those customers because it's just the nature of how media works now.
Sure.
There is
Sure.
no hit, right? There
Sure.
occasionally is a Mike Tyson has a fight that crashes Netflix. For the most part, You know, your
Yeah.
Netflix queue looks much different than mine, right? So
Yeah.
it's just the way media works. But
I
I
don't
can
have
see that.
so
Yeah.
yes.
What gives
Mine is
you
empty.
hope though for the kids that are now working in your shop that are going to take it over? What gives you hope?
Oh, what gives me hope is that comics are better than they've ever been, right? Like as an aesthetic thing, right? Like the thing. So this is the stupidest part. The thing that I've been fighting for all along is the part where I actually won, and yet it's not actually economically viable for most of the participants. Derp. You know, that's a kind of fucked up place to be in. But when we look at how good comics are coming out now, graphic novels are coming out now, um, they're better than they were 5 years ago, which are better than it was 5 years before that, and 10 years before that, and 20 years before that. There are more good comics out today. I can literally sell any single person who walks in the store something. We've got something in here they want, you know. And I'm not even good at the job anymore, right? Like
Yeah.
my staff is so much better at it. There is no subject in the world that you could not come in and that we could not hand you not just a book, but something that we feel something about, you know.
Right.
We may not go, this is the greatest comic you've ever read in your entire life, you know. I'm not going to do that, but like, yeah, here's a thing, and it's a solid piece of work, and it's this and it's that, you know. And yeah, so that gives me all the hope in the world. But when I look at what average sales are for graphic novels, and then I look at what kind of advances people get and what those take in terms of hours of labor, et cetera, I just think that there's a house of cards going on here that you know, maybe the rewards for the lottery are big enough that people will keep playing. In fact, I'm sure people will keep playing because people are still going to art school and you know,
Absolutely.
they're spending money at SVA and CCA, et cetera, et cetera. But you know, I don't know if I get worried about this, right? Because it used to be there was a very, very, very clear path about how you make middle class money in this business as a creator, and I don't think that there's a clear path like that anymore. I think it's really jagged. And very, very luck based now in a way that it wasn't before.
Man, you and I, every time you make statements like that, I think there's a reason why this is so much fun. Is every time you make statements like that, I want to argue whether I have the data or not. So I probably shouldn't. This is one of my favorite questions that came up when I asked, you know, people what to ask you. What comics or volumes published in the last 10 years do you think will become the true perennials for the direct market? You've in the past you've talked about why we need more of these, specifically like the Watchmen's, the Dark Knight Returns, you know, Mouses, the ones that launched your shop. What are they now in the last 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, look at our book club. I think a lot of those books are books that are like that. Might particularly point towards Far Sector. Is a really good superhero comic and science fiction comic that is accessible and readable with characters of color and a strong voice. I would look at Nice House on the Lake is probably another good example. See, I both times my first books that came into my head were DC Comics.
They seem to be doing okay without you.
And yet Brian Hibbs is against DC Comics. You hear?
Yeah. I heard earlier in this conversation. I could see.
Sure. Nice House on the Lake would be a recent example. You know, I mean, it kind of depends on where you're going with, like, and the kind of store that stop texting me, people. And the kind of store that you want to be. I mean, I don't know how many stores are going to be able to sell Eddie On's Advocate, but I would point that as a book that I'm going to be able to sell forever. You know, a lot of this, but here's the other thing, right? Is it completely depends on who your staff are, and because they're the ones who actually make all the choices and what sells. And like, for example, Kat and Zoe both really decided that The Many Deaths of Layla Starr was one of their favorite comics ever. And we steadily, it's a top 20 book for us now. Like, I would never have, I liked the comic. I liked it. I really did like it. But I would never have thought it would be a top 20 book. And it's a very passively top 20 book, right? Because it's a background. Like I always say, most people who work at comic shops can keep somewhere between 6 and, I'll be super generous, 12 comics in their head of someone comes in and goes, what do you recommend? You know?
Sure.
I don't think it's 12. I think it's 8. 6 and 8 is what I really think. But
Okay.
let's say 12. Without having to reach, and so those kinds of books end up becoming bestsellers because that's how the shit works, right? Like that's how sales work. It's all personal connections, and there are things that you can do as a store in terms of how you face a book or how you if we make it a graphic novel club pick, we will sell 10 or 12 copies that we wouldn't have sold otherwise. To punters, I mean, rather than
Sure.
people who are. Those things make a difference, but really, fundamentally, it's the people who sell the comics day to day who are the store. They are the store, and we've been talking about owner operators, but man, there are a lot of staff out there that I love all of you. I love every
100%.
single one of you people because you fucking care and you don't own it, especially, and yet you care as much as the people who own it, and sometimes more. And you are all fucking superstars.
100%. On that, I feel like
that's why I have hope. That's why I have hope, because there are always more superstars coming along, right? Because this is the greatest medium in the world, and we haven't even scratched the surface of what's possible in how and why you make comics. And if there's a part of the graphic novel club, to me, that's the favorite part. We've been talking about the dollars, and we've been talking about how we pick the books, but to me, it's actually talking to the artists and talking to the, like, why do you make art? What were you thinking? How do you break down a page? Like, these are things like nobody asks them that, right? Like most of the people who get interviewed are like book people, right? Like, what was your manual? Tell me about your manual. That's not how it works with comics, man. And I really like talking to comics people about how comics are made, because again, I think it makes us better if we talk and we learn and we share. And why did I write a column? To make it better. Campfire rule. The whole thing's the campfire rule. And it gets worse, it gets better, it gets worse. Right now we're in a worse period, but we'll get better. We'll get there again. Someday we'll get there again.
I love that. It's as close to hope as I can get out of you, and I like that.
What? It's all hope. I mean, dude, seriously, I wake up every morning.
I promise it'll get better.
I wake up and I go, I own a comic book store. Fuck yeah! Is there a better thing that you could do?
No, sir.
If I complain, it's because it's not as good as it could be. It could be better. It could be. We could all be making so much money that we're like, anyone asks, how you doing? That it's not the political answer or because most strangers, they ask you how you're doing. They don't actually want to hear how you're doing. They really don't want to hear how you do. They want to hear, I'm doing great. Everything's fucking great. But that's not the actual reality of how most of the shit works, right? It's a struggle day to day. Most books sell 1 copy a month, if that.
I understand. I get it.
All right.
Is there any, as predicted, we're bumping up on 3 hours.
Yeah.
Is there anything we didn't cover that you wanted to? I want to make sure. Wait.
No. Steph will put the URL on the screen for the Graphic Novel Club and the thing.
Yes.
And, yeah.
Discounted comic book club.
Like I said, that's the only thing I'll say. This is my own personal plea. It's our Patreon. It is what keeps us in business. It is what allows me to pay the staff a living wage, and only a living wage because they have found cheap places to live and things like that. And it's not an actual, they will never be middle class from this wage, because then I would need to pay them $40 an hour. And I would literally go out of business, because I make 17 now.
I understand, buddy. I do.
Yeah.
Listen.
And so if you care about good comic book stores, support those good comic book stores. I mean, support me. Hell yeah, support me. But support all the good comic book stores around you, because you should be able to tell the difference between a good comic book store and a bad comic book store. And the ones that are good are struggling, almost certainly. I knew you were going to do that. The ones who are really supporting the medium of comics itself and not comics as a shopping experience are struggling. Will you agree with that one?
I can think of at least as many exceptions as the rule on that one. So no, I'm not going to give it to you.
Exceptions. Sure.
All right. Sorry, I'm not going to give you most. I can't do it. This has been wonderful. I've had fun. I just want to get that out there. Is that I feel nothing but love here, and all of the antagonism comes from a place of I know you like to argue, and so do I. So
you and I have been fighting for 32 years at least, right?
It's something like that. Back to the
CIA. I haven't even given you any shots. This was all me taking shots all night.
I know.
I totally could have but no. I
look forward to you bringing me on your show, and we'll go at it. I love it.
So now you've got to do a graphic novel. You've got to do a graphic novel that passes my staff's vote. Show.
I don't know if that's going to happen in this lifetime, but I appreciate your optimism for me. How can people find you really quickly? URLs and social media handles?
Yeah, so we're Comics Experience in all places. COMIX Comics, not CS. COMIXEXPERIENCE.com or @ all those. And the Graphic Novel Club, you can find it linked on our website, but there's also Graphic Novel Club branded stuff out there. And if you put Graphic Novel Club, I'm sure we're one of the few things that'll show up. So
cool. This has been fun.
Yeah.
This has been really good.
We got to do part 2, because we barely scratched the surface, man.
We'll see. I'm looking for. I tell you what. What I'll do is I'll say, if you've watched this and you have questions or you have comments or you have things that really enrage you, if you put it on Facebook, I'm not going to do it. If you comment on the YouTube channel, that can actually help us with the algorithm. If we get enough of those, we'll get a part 2. I know that at least Danny over at Alien Books Valiant wants a part 2. So I'll be sure she's got to make sure that she actually gives us whatever that question is.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, buddy. My name is Adam Freeman. This has been Comic Industry Insiders. Find me at Prana DMS. I don't know. We're very inconsistent. You can find me at Adam Bang Freeman as it is. So thank you so much. And namaste, y'all.